Good evening, everyone. It's Monday, June 13th, 6 p.m., and I'm going to call the meeting to order, and we're going to start with roll call.
Charles Black-Lance.
Here.
Kevin Boyles.
Here.
Tom Hageland.
Here.
Ruth Nelson.
Here.
Jana Shogren.
Here.
Sarah Spear.
Here.
All present.
Wonderful. Let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands,
one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Just briefly, that this board meeting is being conducted within Minnesota statutes, and we are recording it, and you can watch it on YouTube Live. And we'll go first with the approval of the agenda, and it's amended because we have additional recognitions.
I'll move to approve the agenda as amended.
I'll second.
Okay, first from Director Shogren, a second from Director Black-Lance. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. And next up, we have recognitions, and with this, we'll go around the table and let each one share. So if you want to, I'll take the first one. Tom, you can take the second one with the first group, and then second group, third group. Does that work? Okay. So first up, just congratulations to our 449 2022 Brainerd High School, Brainerd Learning Center, Lincoln Education Center, and GED graduates. It was a wonderful week of graduations and a beautiful night, and congratulations to our 2 school board members that had graduates too.
All right, next, congratulations to the 2022 State Track and Field Meet qualifiers. There will be another 6 additional relay alternates named at a later date. Brianna Deason, the 100-meter dash pole vault, 6th in the state with a vault of 11 feet 3 inches, and all-state honors school record.
And then Hannah Coffey and shot put and discus, 6th in the state with a discus toss of 124 feet and 1 inch and all-state honors. 13th in the state with a toss of 35 feet 9.5 inches.
Lily Burks with the high jump, and I'll take the next one too. Maddie Miller with the 1,600-meter run, and this is 15th in the state with a time of 5 minutes, 16 seconds, and .68.
Maya Nelson, Kate Statham, Molly Hagley, and Brenna Deason, all in the 4x100 meter relay.
Emily Bastian, Annalise Baird, Brooke Wentz, Bridget Collins, all with a 4x800 meter relay. And Bridget Collins also, the team finished 14th in the state with a time of 9 minutes, 52 seconds.
And it is my honor to introduce Andrew Albright with the shot put, the triple jump, and the 100-meter hurdles. Andrew was a state champion in the shot put with a toss of 57 feet 1 inch, and he gained all state honors. He also took 7th place with the jump of 46 feet 6 3/4 inches, and all state honors in that as well. So congratulations to him. What an honor that is to be a state champion.
Yeah, don't get too many of those. Wow, that's exciting. Okay, Gavin Holzell in the pole vault, 12th in the state with a vault of 11 feet 6 inches. Dylan McLaughlin in the 200-meter dash, and Brandon Stark in the 400-meter dash, 8th in the state with a time of 50:11 and all state honors.
Baden Baston, Michael Howe, Thomas Rule, and Brandon Stark in the 4x800 meter relay. The team took 3rd in the state with a time of 8.5 and all state honors. Congratulations.
Congratulations to the Warrior Girls softball team for being the Section 8 Quadruple A champions and qualifying for the MSHSL state tournament that was held on June 9th and 10th and resulted in our team taking 2nd place in the state and finishing the year with a 26-1 record.
Awesome. Congratulations to Katie Foley and Izzy Olson for being the 8 AAA individuals section qualifiers and qualifying for the Minnesota State High School League State Golf Tournament, which is being held this week, the 14th and 15th.
Congratulations to Max Holmstrom and Turner Person for being 8 AAA individual section qualifiers and qualifying for the MSHSL State Golf Tournament being held June 14th and 15th.
There's a little change here with Hannah Kai. She took 6th in the state with the discus toss of 24 feet 1 inch, not 124 feet.
It's still sailing.
That's like an Olympian champion.
Sorry about that, Kevin. I put one too many numbers in.
Thank you for that clarification.
None of us went wow on that.
Nobody reacted either.
NASA has another UFO sighting.
Well, congratulations to all of our students. Exciting results this spring. And we have one final congratulations, or it's kind of a mixed congratulations, but our Superintendent Lane Larson, this is her last board meeting. She'll be retiring and going off to do new fun and exciting adventures. And I just want to say I've appreciated your leadership of this district for the past 6 years, and you've certainly left your mark with all of our buildings and with the memories everyone will have of you. And at the end of this meeting, Janet ordered cake, so there'll be cake brought out. So congratulations.
Well, I'll wait till the end, when I talk at the end. So
Okay.
Thanks, yeah.
Okay. Next up, we have public input. I don't see anyone. No, nothing, right? Okay, no public input for tonight. So we'll go on to approval of minutes, the special school board meeting on April 25th.
Move to approve.
Second.
We have a first from Director Boyles, a second from Director Spear. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, same side. Motion carries. And next up, we have a communications update presentation with Anne Marie Leitcher, Heidi Hahn, and Lane Larson.
Nope. We need Janet to fix it.
Get my glasses on so I can see.
Get out of her way so she can drive. We're excited because we're going to give you this quick snapshot of where we're at.
Just a sneak peek.
Right, it's a sneak peek, and we're going to leave you on the edge of your seat. I won't Chrome.
Why can't I get Chrome to come up?
Sarah.
So, as we're waiting, we'll discuss. So, one of the things we've talked about is really looking to develop a comprehensive communication plan for our district. And we've started that work, and it's getting more exciting as we look and we get more feedback from stakeholders. One of the key things we're going to do and we're going to talk to you about is really coming up with a positioning statement, which is really where we take all of our communication from.
I need
So it's
the
going to be
email.
where we launch and where we land.
Can't get the email. Where did you go?
I just added a new tab and then clicked on Gmail.
What will be the group to do the mission of the statement?
So we've been working with a group. So Anne Marie and Carla have been helping lead us along with Superintendent Larson. And we had a meeting last week with district administration to really look at what they felt we needed, where we were going.
Well, and not just district administration, we have a across-the-board sampling of people we invited to participate, so community members and
About 30 people, wouldn't you say?
yeah.
On the list.
And Sarah, Kevin, and I are part of it.
Correct. Okay. So, what are the goals of our communication plan? The biggest thing we wanted is to be comprehensive. So we really, like we said, we want everything to tie back to that. We are in the process of seeking feedback and input now, and the other thing we'll be doing is that's going to be continuous input and feedback as we move through this process. It includes parents, students, staff, and community members, as well as our administrative team. Our goal in this plan is that it'll be responsive. We want it to be very timely, and we want it to meet the needs of our stakeholders. So as we've learned, there's lots of communication that happens from our district, But parents and some of our families are looking for one spot to go get that communication. And then what is the difference? And some things we've talked about, the consistency. So where do I go for inclement weather compared to where do I look for school activities and issues like that? We also want it to be easily accessible, so people can get it from their mobile device, they can get it from our website, they might be able to hear different things on a radio, there'll be printed material as well. But again, that's something when we talk about the transparency is we really want everybody who's looking at Brainerd Public Schools to have an understanding of what we're doing, when we're doing it, and why we're doing it. And the other thing is we're really looking at it as an avenue to celebrate our district. So one of the things we've talked about is we don't necessarily tell our story very well. And we're trying to figure out the best way to really showcase what our school district is doing.
So like Heidi said, this is going to be part of a comprehensive project, and really we plan for it to take a full year to develop. But this summer we are building the framework, generating ideas, and just getting a jump start on some things. We just really want to get some information out to families. And then we'll continue to refine and expand it throughout the year. The plan that we're working on has long-term sustainability, and it's adaptable to meet the needs of the district as the district changes, and the community, as well as our family communication needs.
So what we talked about is something to be excited about, and that's where we're not going to really disclose a lot tonight. That's going to come more in July. But our communications plan is more than just about the nuts and bolts of what's happening in school and all things school. So a lot of times we're thinking about the communication as the information that's coming from principals or things like that, and there's a variety of ways we can go back, but we're not necessarily always controlling our narrative at times. So we really want to have a chance to tell our story, and that's what we talk about next is about that positioning statement. So when we go to tell our story, it's going to be where things start to take off and where they always come back to. And by doing that, it's going to allow our communications to be very consistent, to have them be unified, and to have them be aligned. So when we have a large leadership team, we have 12 buildings, we have lots of activities, we have lots of arts, we have lots of academics, we have lots of amazing things happening, and there's lots of communication that needs to occur. So again, fine-tuning that to come into a plan. This will be included in our comprehensive strategic plan with measurable goals and outcomes, and like we said, we're going to constantly be seeking ways to improve. I don't know that we'll ever get it right, but like Anne Marie said, it has long-term sustainability. So when we talk about a positioning statement, that positioning statement really is what is our truth. And so what we talk about is it's one of the ways we've explained it is it's the high ground we already own. It's who we are and what we do, and it's our truth that we're going to tell. And the best part about it is things are really easy to do when you have to tell the truth and just showcase that. And like I've talked about before, it's going to allow us to launch all of our communication and also gives us that landing place of where it can come back to. We are positive that it's going to be a position that no other public, private, or online education can match. And that's where I'm getting excited. That's where you're supposed to be at the edge of your seat. And we know that on the good days, we're going to sing everything about it. And on difficult days, which we have, it's going to be a place where we still take respite and have pride in what we're doing.
So we will keep working on it. We'll continually be seeking stakeholder input and feedback. There are a lot of facets to this plan, and we'll continue to bring them to you as we work on them. In July's board meeting, we'll plan to highlight our positioning statement, website updates, and our progress to date. So
know by the end of June, that positioning statement will probably become more public. So I know the stakeholders and our community members that we've had involved already know what that is, and I think Superintendent Larson can say the energy that came in the room was really fun. And it really, I think once you see it and hear it, you're going to see how that all comes together. And the people we're working with, it's really fun because like they said, we're just really figuring out a way to have that narrative and that communication out more consistently and highlight what we do. So questions?
I was just going to say one thing I really liked. I think several of us were at the Brainerd Learning Center, and you had on the screen those stories of graduates, and that's part of this plan
some of that
to highlight
history
those.
piece in. That's
Yeah, and those were wonderful. So
you can give a huge shout out. So that's Anne Marie and then Carla. So by the time we got to graduation, and John Erickson, John Erickson was phenomenal in helping us with that. But we taxed Carla with that in the hopes of, we had fourth grade graduations coming up really quick, so she in about a week, her and John really got messages out, and what's fun is they keep coming. So part of that was a portrait of a graduate, if you didn't get to see it at a graduation ceremony, but we really looked at students who've gone through our system and what are they doing now. And we had one young man who was basically in his bunk, in serving in the armed forces and kind of telling who he was and what he was doing, to somebody working for NASA, somebody who's doing advertisement for Catan. So it was just super fun. And the parents that we saw, they literally stopped. They just say, wow. And you think about, this is what Brainerd Public Schools can do and look at the future you might have. From local business owners to people who are overseas, it was very fun. And we have lots of examples like that. So that's all tying back into getting that message out, as well as the nuts and bolts of what we do. So we want that to be a comprehensive plan.
I was at that meeting on Wednesday, and I was fired up when I went out of there. I think it's really cool what we've got on deck. I'm really excited about it. As somebody who's lived in sales and marketing my entire career and communications, I think it's really cool, and I love the idea of, you know, having these global, broad positioning statements and branding the district in a positive way, but then creating those mosaics of those little stories, right, and having them all feed into the bigger one. I think that's something that was missing, and it's pretty evident that the firm that we're using, Aaron and his team, as well as Anne Marie and Carla and those people that you guys have done, I'm super excited about it.
They're doing lots of work. So again, we want to make sure we connect all the dots. That's our goal. But that's why we will heavily rely on that input and that feedback so we can continuously improve, because that's what we need to keep doing. So more to come.
And we need everyone on board.
We do. And that's the thing we talked about. It can't just come from communications. So it is going to take all of us. And that's one of the things we're going to be doing to work with all of our staff, that this is who we are and what we do, and we have to own that and make sure that we're communicating clearly about that, and holding each other accountable to that as well. Yeah, by the time we get together in July, it's going to be a little, and I guarantee you there's going to be a certain jingle that just kind of, it's already stuck in my head. Kind of, yeah, Folgers, but ours is even better. So, and then the other thing, if I can take this moment, we do have somebody else that we need to thank for continuous years of service and really leaving a footprint and a legacy on Brainerd Public Schools, and that's Sarah Porish. So as you saw on your consent agenda, Sarah Porish is moving on. But knowing Sarah, if you would have looked at when she was hired, we really didn't have devices in kids' hands, and we really did not have any type of digital curriculum. We were starting to experiment, and so she was hired in a very unique role to understand networking and instruction. And that goes back to one of the original plans with Clint Willard and his entry, and then talk about a pandemic fast forwarding that, and I can't imagine anybody better. And Sarah is a phenomenal systems thinker. If you want somebody who knows budgeting and putting out a 1-year plan, 3-year plan, 5-year plan, 7-year plan, and then you throw something at her, she really adapted and really helped us survive and thrive in a pandemic. We outshined everyone around us because of the work Sarah and her team were doing. She has a phenomenal team too, so she's led a great team. She's going to be sorely missed. She was my saving grace and Angie's as we had to figure out how to count and total and report COVID numbers, and she figured out how, like, well, I don't know why you're counting 6,000 lines, Heidi. If we just do this and this, look. Pew. So, yeah, helped me not have a mental breakdown. She was very talented, and so we have huge shoes to fill. It'll be sad for us, but creating an opportunity of where do we need to go next. But I do want to thank Sarah. Just like Superintendent Larson, you've left a legacy and a footprint that has really changed and shaped our district. So thank you.
Thank you for adding that, Heidi. Do we have any other questions? Okay, we'll go on to approval of that consent calendar that includes Sarah Porsche's resignation.
All right, jump the gun, Sarah. Surprise.
I'll move to approve the consent calendar.
Second. First from Director Sjogren, a second from Director Boyles. Any discussion?
Just had one quick question. I noticed some handful of some new positions, and without getting into the weeds, is it safe to assume that though they're listed as new positions, we're not overall necessarily adding staff, I know we're gonna get into budget discussions later, but is that a fair assumption?
Yes.
From a head count
They're
and-
just reporting it differently at the board table, but it's positions that we have. For instance, the community education positions, they're positions that we already had in place, but we hire them just for the summer, and it's usually students. And some may come back year after year, but they're just for a short period of time, those positions when they're open. And so,
Okay, I guess I wasn't necessarily referring to the summer, so there are a lot of the summer hires, but, you know.
There's like a
Depends who you're
Nisswa
referring to.
Elementary teacher.
Yeah, teacher,
certain
a
list.
principal, those, you know, those,
There's a couple of them.
yeah, not many.
Assistant Activities Director, which really, is that a new position?
yep, that one we talked about through the budgeting,
Okay.
when we changed
But
the
it's
dean
kinda-
structure
yeah,
to the
okay.
principal structure and took away the extra hours for the middle school level and.
Okay, yeah, but I mean, we had that position, it was just a
Correct, it's
half-time.
just different,
Yeah, yeah, okay.
So, yeah, so I guess my question was just on those new full-time year-round positions that we aren't necessarily adding headcount and dollars, if you will.
Correct, they're filling positions where someone has left that we still need the position based on the enrollment and what each of the schools needs. And so they're positions that need to be filled to carry on our programming. So if someone has left and they're filling those positions, but I can't think of any additional.
Well, there's
Those
some
are usually
repurposing in here,
replacements.
Why don't you come up here, Angie?
Yeah,
because like if you look like at the Josh Fordyce one in here, right, that's a new position, but it's a
Right, but then
repurposing of an
there's-
individual.
and there's some special education ones which we have to.
Correct.
There's restructuring. I think that's what it gets down to. So some of the sections, there were some section reductions, and then there were some grade levels that had more kids that we had to add a section. So if there was not a replacement on there, it would be just moving a position basically.
So like the
But ultimately,
Nisswa,
it's new, right,
like the Nisswa Elementary, it might be a new position within that elementary.
within that core, but it's not a new budget line, basically.
Okay.
I mean,
And
it's
so
kind of restructuring. And then the one other one that I know looked like a lot of new positions with football in middle school, because we hired a lot of new ones. They did a whole restructure of the program. Same with activities, there was a restructure within that. So really, it's nothing new. It's
Not impacting
kind
the
of
budget on those.
restructuring through the budgeting process of where the needs actually are, where they were reduced here, but they were needed here. But if you guys would like to see that reported differently, I mean, feel free to.
No, I was just looking for that we don't have a net gain, you know, with
No.
reduction of enrollment, we don't have a net gain of
No,
staff. Okay, perfect,
So,
thank you.
so, yeah, so this is basically already in our budget.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Okay, so we have a first from Director Schroeder, a second from Director Boyles. Any other comments? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign, motion carries. Next up, we have new business, and we'll start with our A-Wing update with Damian Williams and Mark Needham. You're staying back? Okay. Hi,
It's all
Mike.
related to my project anyway, so. Good evening. Here to present on a couple of PRs. So PR 58 for the plan, or excuse me. PR 58 for the plumbing plan review changes to A-Wing in the amount of $81,550. And this is this is regarding the above ground or in-wall plumbing changes that were adjusted or commented on by the state. And the changes that go along with adding the scope for that. And so they're asking for approval of that. And then PR 61, is the plumbing plan review for the services line, or the underground service lines at A-Wing for $127,600 or $127,692. Again, this is for underground updates, and it's based on the state plan review and their comments for the underground plumbing, which routes the sanitary lines from we were originally tying into the west side of the building, but moving that to the east side of the building, and that avoids disrupting space within the school that's already been finished.
And also, yeah, that initial sewer line wasn't big enough
Correct.
to carry the increased load, so the best way to do it is to create a new one.
Right, yep, to run it out and tie it into Fifth Street instead of through the back of the building down by the parking lots, if that makes sense.
This has gone through project oversight and the executive team and brought forward, and so we're bringing it forward today because we believe that this is the best plan for dealing with this situation. We have the money in our budget, and we really need approval of it quickly so that it doesn't slow down our process of getting ready to make sure that we're ready for school in August.
So does this come out of contingency then?
Yes, it will be contingency funds.
And we have
but there are
adequate
funds to cover it,
contingency?
yes.
And Mark, can you just give us a quick update for those of us that aren't here on how A-Wing is going, since it's such a tight.
It is going quickly, to summarize. No, we've more or less finished all the demolition in the project, so we're at a point where we're starting to put things back together. There's wall framing, there's in-wall mechanical and electrical rough-in taking place. The overhead mechanical systems are nearly completed. We've actually started talking with the flooring contractors to talk about floor preparation and starting to put it back together. So we're at a point where we've got past taking it apart, and now we've started to bring it back together. So,
So we're on schedule or
yeah,
ahead of schedule?
we're on schedule. We had to make some changes to the schedule because of this underground issue. But we were able to get the contractors to adjust what they needed to do and to be able to accommodate for it, so.
I'll move to approve PR 58 as presented.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a first from Director Hagelin, a second from Director Blacklance. Any further discussion on PR 58? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign, motion carried. And then we have PR 61.
I'll make a motion to approve PR 61 as presented.
A second?
Okay, we have a first from Director Spear, a second from Director Sjogren. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, same side. And then finally, any further discussion, any other questions on A-Wing? Mark, before I let him go. And you're done, I think, right?
Yep.
Thank you, Mark.
Do you want to do a tour of A-Wing,
Well, and South Campus would be fun sometime, yeah.
like before the July meeting or something?
Yeah.
Would,
South Campus would be 99% done at that point, so.
Well, that'd be great.
Yeah.
like 5 o'clock on
Or
July
July
11th? Does that work for people?
I can make that work.
Is that enough time, do you think?
Maybe 4:30.
4:30?
I would think so, yeah.
Okay. Sure.
Great.
Wonderful. And next up, we have our annual ACOMP report with Beth Cooper. Welcome.
Hello.
Hi, my name is Beth Cooper. I'm the ACOMP coordinator and one of the curriculum teachers on special assignment here in Brainerd. This is the ACOMP annual report. So one of the things that I try to do every year is talk a little bit about what ACOMP is and what it does. This is an alternative compensation program for teachers. And it's a collaborative effort between our district, building administrators, teachers, and the state of Minnesota. So there's a lot of people involved here. But really it is intended to improve teaching skills, to raise student achievement, reward positive, like good teaching, and then ensure that all of our students are learning. There are 5 components to our plan. The first is that we have leadership professional development. All of our leaders are trained, whether they're curriculum leaders, peer coaches, PLC leaders, they all receive some type of training each year. There's a teacher appraisal piece to this. That's our peer coaching and mentoring program. We have salary enhancement, so all of our leaders receive enhancement as well as all of our teachers who participate in the program. So for participating in their PLCs, for being observed and completing that process, they receive a stipend at the end of the year. And then the fifth component is the site level achievement goals. So at the CIP retreat in August, each building will set a goal, and when the buildings meet their goal, each teacher in that building will receive the stipend for that. So the ACLT is the leadership team, the governing board, I would say, of the ACOMP program here. There's 3 teacher members representing K through 4, 5 through 8, and then 9 through 12. And then we have 3 administrative members as well who attend each of the meetings and make the decisions. And then obviously there's some non-voting members who attend. Misty Job, our EMB president, often attends. Heidi Hahn is consistently attending our meetings and is actively involved there. And then I am a non-voting member. So there's been some positive feedback about ACOMP. It really gives teachers a structure and a time for them to collaborate, to work together, to talk about students, to learn about instructional practices, to improve their work. So this is opportunity for them to do their professional learning together about the students that they're working with and trying out new things in a safe space. It's really about building leadership capacity. So all of our leaders are trained and they have the opportunity then to take on more and try out some, being a colleague and leading the way and trying out some new things. And this plan is also really connected with our teacher development and evaluation plan. So the two of them overlap quite a bit, which is helpful, I think, for teachers as far as being able to not do extra things, but to be doing one thing and have it count for both. Our budget supports the ACOMP leadership training and the professional development. There's $300,000 in district positions that it supports, including our elementary math and science TOSAs, our elementary literacy and social studies TOSA, and then our K through 12 SPED curriculum TOSA. This supports our mentors for new teachers, which is a pretty intense program for those teachers to be doing on top of their work. And then professional development for our new teachers, which they have some extra trainings that they need to attend. And then it pays for substitutes and time for our leaders, for reverse observations, for all of those things. So our teachers are being paid or there's sub-coverage for them to do that. Here's a little glimpse of the budget. So this coming year, our estimated revenue from the past is about $600,000, and our expected funding is about $1.6 million. So if you take a look at the different categories, looking at the alternative salary, so that would be like our teacher stipends, the career ladder augmentation, that would be stipends for our leaders for doing the extra work and those kinds of, basically the stipends. Program coordination, so that would pay for the coordinator, and then also the ACLT members receive a stipend for their leadership. The teacher leaders do only. And then the district initiative piece, that we have money there for that. We carried over money from this year into next year from that, so that's why it's not the $300,000, it's the $338,000. And then $84,000 for the professional development time, and then we support the data collection. That's the benchmark testing that we do in the elementary schools. They need some support with paying for substitute teachers and things to get that work done, so that's where that money is spent. So, some recommendations for next year based on our annual review really were that for PLCs, we want to work on focusing on assessment and the use of that data to drive what instructional strategies we're using and what we're learning about. With our curriculum leaders, we really want to focus on developing a district assessment plan overall, the creation and refinement of content area and learning targets, just really tightening things up a little bit, common assessments, and then instructional strategies. With our peer coaches and mentors, we would like to keep working on improving how we facilitate and participate in discussion around our instruction and how we can be more intentional about those conversations that we have. And then with our building administrators, just looking at increasing our communication about the ACOMP program and how they can support within their buildings, and then providing them with professional resources for that. Do you have any questions?
What was the focus for PLCs this last year? Was it pretty much the same?
It was somewhat similar this year. We started a book called 7 Strategies of Assessment for Learning this past year. And we can tackle 1 or 2 chapters in a training. And so that's really how
So you're continuing
we're just
on.
going to continue that work. We really shouldn't have anything that's too new, but I would say that we're probably being more intentional about having a long-term plan and how that will connect with some of the other district initiatives. It's a great question.
Any other questions? Okay. So we need approval of this ACOMP report. Someone want to make a motion?
I'll move to approve the ACOMP report as presented.
Thank you.
I'll second it.
Okay, we have first from Director Hagelin, a second from Director Boyles. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you, Beth.
Thank you.
Okay, next up, we have the World's Best Workforce presentation, Read Well by Third Grade, with Taylor. There was a lot of information that you sent us.
There is. Try to summarize it as best that I can. All right. Good evening. I'm Taylor Demuth, and I'm the Elementary Literacy and Social Studies Coordinator. Tonight I'll be presenting our Read Well by Grade 3 data, our dyslexia document, and our local literacy plan. So first of all, Read Well by Grade 3 is part of the Minnesota state statute that requires districts to submit reading proficiency data for all students K2 with the goal of having all students reading at or above grade level by grade 3. This data submission includes the local literacy plan, district reading proficiency data, and then also our dyslexia screening data. So next I'll move into the elements of our local literacy plan. So I have the plan attached here. Section 1 is the goals that we have for all students. Section 2 is how we progress monitor. Section 3 is how we keep parents informed about their students' progress in reading. Section 4 is what supports we can provide students that are not reading at or above grade level. And Section 5 is how we continue to support teachers' professional learning in the area of literacy. And within that area, our literacy coaches come into play. We have an elementary literacy coach at each of the buildings who coaches teachers on an individual basis. The focus of the coaching is specifically on the effective implementation of the multi-text approach to literacy instruction. So this type of coaching is tailored to the specific individual's level of understanding of the reading and writing process, with an emphasis on building on what they already know. The other layer of this is the professional development that we provide. The literacy coaches and myself, we meet and we collaborate looking over the district literacy data to determine what type of professional development we need. Then the facilitation of those sessions occur within the individual buildings and is again tailored to the building's individual strengths and needs. The other component of this support is we also have team meetings that occur within each of the elementary buildings. That's where the coaches and the building principals collaborate to analyze and look over the district literacy data and the building data to reflect and plan forward to meet the needs of students. Section 6 is the comprehensive approach we use for reading instruction, which is the multi-text approach, which really in summary is looking at whole group, small group, and independent individualized instruction, both in reading and writing. The different contexts that we use support students and allow teachers to vary the level of support based on how the students are taking on the various concepts. And the rationale for this approach is that reading, as you know, is a highly complex process, so it allows teachers to strategically meet the needs of all learners. Section 7, we're still working to continue to support our teachers in our cross-cultural competence. We started the process last year of purchasing some new read alouds for our K-4 classrooms. We collaborated with Ashley Ingebrigtsen. We continued the support. This year we allowed for some time during grade level meetings for teachers to collaborate, ask questions, share how they're using the resources within their classroom, and with having that expert to kind of answer those questions and help them to feel comfortable to use the resources in authentic ways. And then the final piece, Section 8, that's where we screen all students K-4 using the benchmark assessment system, which is text leveling. This is the initial screener that we use for dyslexia. And then for any child that is performing below grade level on that assessment, then we have other screening tools that we use that I'll go over later that specifically align with indicators of dyslexia. So if a child does not pass 3 of the 6 diagnostic tools, we inform parents, share with them what interventions are occurring, and then also provide resources that can be used at home. So the next piece that I have, I'll be sharing the Read Well by Grade 3 data for the 21-22 school year. The Read Well data includes the following assessments: letter identification for kindergarten, concepts about print for kindergarten, hearing and recording sounds and words for first grade, benchmark assessment system, that's the text leveling piece for grades K-4, and then the online star reading assessment, which is grades 2 through 4. So for letter identification, and I have it broken out by schools for you guys to review as well. I'll just be sharing the district percentage proficiency for each. So letter ID, kindergarten, we had 92% proficiency. Concepts about print, we had 84% proficiency. This is another kindergarten assessment. Hearing and recording words and sounds, sounds and words, 88% proficiency, and this is a first grade assessment. And then we move into the text leveling component. So for kindergarten, the students that were reading at or above grade level, we had 67%. First grade, we had 64%. Second grade, we had 66%. Third grade, we had 64%. And fourth grade, 67%. And then moving on to the star reading, the online assessment. Second grade, we had 60% proficiency. Third grade, 65%. And fourth grade, 68%. The other piece of data that I'll be sharing is the district dyslexia screening totals. With this data, it's important to note that these students were screened to have characteristics of dyslexia, but we do not diagnose as it's a medical diagnosis. Also, there may be other developmental factors that are causing these characteristics to present themselves. However, based upon that data, we provide further support to address their needs. So in kindergarten, we had 28% of kindergartners who were identified with those characteristics. First grade, 32%. Second grade, 20%. Third grade, 10%. And fourth grade, 5%. And I think it's really important as we look at that data to remember that each assessment is just one data point on one assessment. With the data being year-end data, it doesn't provide that context to show that actual student growth that has occurred. This year I had the opportunity to be present in the elementary buildings a lot more frequently since COVID began, and I saw teachers working incredibly hard each day to meet the needs of their students where they were at and provide high-quality learning experiences. So I'm really excited to continue working with the literacy coaches and all the elementary teachers to continue to reflect and refine our work together. So the next piece, I'm going to go over just the indicators of dyslexia. All of the assessments that we use align with these so that we're specifically looking for these characteristics. So the first is poor phonemic awareness, and that's that ability to hear individual sounds in words and identify those sounds. Poor decoding, the letter-sound relationship, used to translate a word from a series of symbols to a unit of meaning. That's really difficult for some students that have with dyslexia. Spelling is also a very difficult piece with that. And poor orthographic recall and memory. And when you think of orthographic awareness, that's the knowledge of the visual features of written language, those distinct features of letters, the patterns, the spelling patterns of within words. So students with that poor orthographic recall, they struggle to retain the memory of those the combination of letters and sequence of letters. All right. So the next piece outlines the specific supports that are part of the dyslexia document, and that's section 8, which is linked to the last slide and is also on page 18 of our local literacy plan. That document includes resources, articles, interventions, and district forms. With that, it's a document that we provide our teachers that walks them through what are the indicators of dyslexia, what tools are we using to screen for them, and also for each skill or concept that we're trying to help the students to acquire, there are if-then statements. If a child can't do this at this point, then they need this support. And we continue through the multiple tiers of support, starting with tier 1, which is that core instruction, moving through tier 2 and tier 3 to continue to support the students. The specific interventions and curricular resources are also included within that document. It's shared with all elementary teachers so that we're all on the same page, providing that consistent instruction. And finally, on this slide, this just shows that multi-tiered approach, with the tier 1 being that core instruction, tier 2 being intervention, which oftentimes does occur in the classroom, and then the tier 3, which is that intensive intervention. So I know that's a lot of information all at once. Does anybody have questions for me at this point?
So Taylor knows this is a subject that's near and dear to my heart as a parent. Yes. What interventions are we using for kids who are identified as having dyslexia?
Great question. So with each of the different indicators of dyslexia, we have different interventions that are tied to them. So for example, for the poor phonemic awareness, if that's what's identified through the screening process, tier 1 is pre-guided reading, tier 2 is more of a pre-teach, reteach, and then tier 3 is road to the code. And then it's kind of that subsequent, then we look at poor decoding. Tier 1 is guided reading, which is that guided reading instruction in the small group setting. Tier 2 is level literacy intervention. Tier 3 is read well or read naturally. Poor spelling, that on-coding piece. Tier 1 is words their way, which is a component of our spelling and word study curriculum. Tier 2 is that pre-teach and reteach of that. Depending on what the child's needs are, is it something that I as the teacher can support ahead of time, or is it something that I need to review after that words their way lesson occurs? And then for the poor orthographic memory and recall, if that's what the child's specifically struggling with, the high frequency word instruction is tier 1. Then we have a high frequency word intervention, and then read naturally is our tier 3. And all of those interventions are outlined in that document to help support teachers, and it should be taking place consistently across each of the buildings.
District, have we been able to bring Barton or Orton Gillingham into our district yet?
We are not currently using that within the district, yeah.
It's a pretty important piece for those who don't know. I mean, a lot of dyslexic children will not learn how to read naturally, so they need a different intervention. And I commend Taylor's work and her team's work, and I know you probably wish you had way more resources and there's more stuff that we can do, but just to put it in perspective for people, a parent of a dyslexic child will spend thousands of dollars so their child learns to read outside of what we can do as a district. Literally thousands of dollars for the diagnosis and the personal tutoring. So as much emphasis as we can put on this and resources as we can do, it will pay off in dividends for our kids.
percentage of dyslexia?
Estimated, and this was per MDE, estimated to affect about 1 in 5% of the population, with some that includes mild symptoms as well.
Okay.
One of the pieces that we are continuing our work around within MTSS, we're working to look at the interventions we have, how are we utilizing them, how are we refining them as needed. K-12, and this is a huge piece of it, is just looking at what interventions do we have, are we effectively using them, what is our data telling us, and moving forward, planning forward.
And then what I hear from Jana saying that parents have to spend all this time and money, those are parents that can do that. And a lot of the parents in our school district can't do that. So that would be a concern that us as a board should have.
1 in 5 kids is a lot for us to not be maybe moving to that next step at some point. We pull kids out, which is fantastic, but if the fact is, if we're not teaching a child how they learn, it's a waste for everyone involved, and it is nothing to teachers' fault. I mean, teachers aren't as of now taught how to teach a dyslexic child right now. So there's a lot of work to still be done, and I'm thrilled that Taylor's in her position, because I know Taylor very well, and she has a heart for this. So we can't go far enough and fast enough on this work for me.
And I think that's part of that professional development piece too, that, within that individual building level, as well as at a district level, continuing to help the teachers to look at the data and analyze it, refine our craft, refine what interventions, and really have that systemic approach to, when I look at the interventions we have in place, it is systemic, and it's just now kind of fine tuning that to make it as effective as possible for all of our kids.
So maybe I missed it somewhere. I'm not understanding it correctly. It's just for my own edification, I suppose. When you do the screening and look for the various characteristics, it seemed like K through 2, those numbers were significantly high, and then they just sort of fall off a cliff on grades 3 and 4. What am I missing there? Why does it do that?
So what happens is with some of those assessment tools, it's a diminishing testing model. So once the student has mastered it, within those, we use all of the same screening tools K4. So the ones that the percentages drop if they have mastered certain assessments.
So the efficacy of sort of intervention and catching this is earlier is better,
Early
obviously, like anything else. And then, that makes sense, because by the time they get there,
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep. Any other questions?
I have one quick question, and I'm sure you don't have this whole plan memorized. There's one piece in here when you mention that starting in the school year 1920, you guys went to the benchmark literacy and words their way curricular resources. I know it's been a wonky few years, but any insights from switching to that?
It's really challenging to look. I mean, as I was preparing for this presentation and looking over the data and planning for next year, it's hard to say exactly the effectiveness just with the year that we've had, from even comparing last year's May data to this year's May data. I will say we are continuing to support teachers and, how can we use this curricular resource and then fine tune it to meet what they need and tweak things that need to be tweaked. Just with us having adopted it a while ago, we have that ability to kind of look and see what's working well and what maybe do we need supplemental resources, or what other pieces can we add?
I mean, that makes sense, right? I mean, trying to do year to year, it's like the MCAs or whatever, there's not really any connectivity or continuity to be able to do that. So I guess it begs the question, and as you do look at the data that you got this May, what are you looking at from a comparative perspective, like beyond, district level data? Do you compare that to state level data? What are you doing as you look at it, to try to see how it's benchmarking, at least with some context?
Really, the biggest piece that I look at is from fall to spring, looking at those that at a building level. Where are kindergartners in the fall? Where are they in the spring? And where are there pieces K4 that maybe we start to see a decline, or where do we start to see? So I really try to look at that cohort against that cohort again in the spring, if that makes sense. Just to continue that tracking piece. And one of the pieces that we're looking into providing further support is the shared reading component, which is really huge, because that allows students that are not reading at grade level to have access to grade level appropriate text with the support of a teacher. And that's part of that multi-text approach to literacy instruction. So just continuing our training teachers around those different components just to kind of tighten up some of those things and just refine what they're already doing.
Okay, so if I heard that right, it's kind of an intra-district tool that you use to gauge
Correct.
progress from the beginning of the year to the end of the year,
Yep.
as opposed to trying to take our district or individual buildings and benchmark them against somebody else.
Yes, correct. And oftentimes the benchmarks that we are setting for the district are more rigorous than the state, so that's why we kind of stick within the district.
So yeah, we use the MCAs more to look at us compared to the state, and then this is more internal.
Yeah. Any other questions?
It's just, Taylor, is this your first year in this position?
No, this is my second year.
Second year, so did you see more growth this year when we had
Yes.
a whole year?
In person. And I think just giving teachers the time in the classroom with to have their kids a full year together. They were faced with many other challenges with students coming back, and they, again, that's where I wanted to stress the fact that they met them where they were at, and they continued that high quality instruction while meeting them right where they were. And I think it speaks volumes of the importance of being in class with these highly trained professionals.
That's what I expected you to say. So.
Yes. Yeah. So I am seeking board approval of the local literacy plan and the data that has been shared.
Do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve, and on here it says the world's best workforce, read well by third grade as presented. Does that include the local literacy plan?
Yes.
I'll second.
We have a first from Director Spear, a second from Director Blacklands. Any further questions or comments?
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you for all your hard work.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Taylor.
Thanks.
All
Thank you.
in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. And next we have the Information Technology Handbook. Information.
I think it's Information Technology and Specialist Handbook.
Okay.
So I may not have caught that in review of the agenda. So this handbook it's an at-will handbook. What we're trying to do as a district is to try to create a more comprehensive document for at-will employees that really outlines their compensation, their benefits, FMLA, bereavement. What does all that mean? Currently, the state is that they each get a one-page document that basically says their compensation and what benefits they're eligible for and any district contribution, but doesn't give a whole lot of meat to it. So the goal that I'm working on is to take similarly suited positions and create a handbook for those. So this was kind of my first one. Next year you'll be seeing community ed, coordinators, those types of things. So we can get away from that one-page document and really create a collective group that can come every 2 years or whatever the handbook states and really let the district know what's important to them. So is it just compensation? Would they rather see, a better district contribution to benefits? Do they want more money for tuition? Those types of things. So the goal of this is just kind of a launching pad of kind of where people were at, creating consistent benefits across employees. One problem with the one-pagers is they all have something different, even if they're in the same position. One will have a dental contribution, the one that got hired at a different date might not have a dental contribution. So really just trying to, again, create consistency across all employees, that they have access to the same benefits, that we're providing similar situations for our folks. So that being said, this is kind of our first draft, or not really draft, our first stab at it. And it really, I think it gives a lot more information than what they're used to. They haven't provided a copy at this point. As we move forward every 2 years, like I said, we will meet with a group similar to what we do with our union groups, just to have that conversation and see where their interests lie, and then bring recommendations forward for any changes. So I'm just requesting approval of this handbook. Any questions?
I don't have any questions. I really appreciate the work you put in this, Angie. I think this is long overdue.
Yes.
I appreciate this. I think it's great to have everyone on the same page. So with that in mind, I will approve the 2022 through 24 IT Specialists and Comp and Benefits Handbook as presented by Angie.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a first from Director Hagelin, a second from Director Sjogren. Any further comments? Oh, it is good work.
Thank you.
It's a lot of work.
Excellent.
Really good.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Thank you.
And next up, we have some liability and audit service, a bunch of miscellaneous things with Marcy Lord and Janet Horn.
And the budget, and the preliminary budget.
Okay. Oh, yeah, and okay.
Good evening. I'm gonna find my presentation. Alright. So in your guys' board packet is a detailed document for the budget for next year. And this is just gonna be a brief summary. If you have questions, please don't hesitate to ask. As you know, we've walked through this many times. Our starting point is this year's revised budget. We take that starting point, which is about the 1.8 million in the unassigned deficit, and roll that forward and then put in our assumptions. So for next year, we had a 2% increase in the gen ed formula, a decrease in student enrollment of 69 adjusted pupil units. Our compensatory was a 20.5% decrease. The percent decrease in the levy was 1.4. The actual was 9%, as explained. And when we look at enrollment, that's our big ticket number, right? What are we generating? So we use the projected base on a 5-year average. In the past, we've used weighted, but that puts more weight on the most previous years. And as you know, we've seen some dramatic changes in student enrollment. So we actually just went with the unweighted 5-year average to get we're hoping that we'll get some of those kids back next fall. But we will see how that shakes out. Sorry, lost my page. So that's what number I used for in the what if. And then when we looked at our expense assumptions, we increased the salary based on our labor agreements, any known or estimates. Increased our contracted transportation. We had an increase in the OPEB draw, which was good. This is incorrect, net reduction in staffing of approximately 13.5, and then known replacement savings. So who do we know that has resigned to date and we're replacing? Those are all in there. So when all that is said and done, the 2022-23 preliminary budget in the general fund has a deficit of about 1.8 million in the unassigned. And I don't go through all the other categories because they are restricted. There's not a whole lot of changes in there. Operating capital, we did do a little bit different this year. In the past, certain departments have just been, assigned a specific budget, and it may not necessarily meet their needs if their request is more than if I'm allocated $20,000 every year and I need a dishwasher that's 50. So this year we tried to take requests. I reviewed that with the Director of Buildings and Grounds and Superintendent, and we looked at what could we do this summer because we still have construction projects happening. So there are requests on there that we would like to get done. It just may not happen this summer, and or we may look at, on breaks and what can we get done during the breaks. So that is different compared to what we've done in the past. And then the LTFM, that is based on last year's plan. You guys will see that coming up here in July, an updated plan. So then with the revision, I would, the budget revision in December, I would update that if that gets changed at all. Any questions on that? So with that, the unassigned fund balance policy is 10%. With this projected fund balance, we'd be looking at about 7 million, which is 7.9%. And I know that that is less than our policy, but just some things to consider. Potential increase in fall enrollment with our communication strategy we have going on. Historically, the year ends better than projected, which is also anticipated for 21-22, so that would help our fund balance go up. And then the potential to receive state and federal funds. If there was a special session and they got the E12 supplemental bill, that could be positive for us, but that's a big unknown, unfortunately. And then also, one thing on here that is evaluate all positions before filling. So throughout the summer, if we have other positions that we have a resignation or a retirement, we'd want to look at that and see if we need to be filling that position with where we're sitting. Any questions on the general fund? So the other funds, Fund 2 is, you guys are, throughout Fund 1, there's still unknowns. Fund 2 is the same. So there is some waivers for the federal government to have free meals again. We don't know the answer on that. If the feds do not come through, Alyssa said that there is also, or excuse me, the food service director said that there is also a state waiver that is kind of hinging on that. So right now in the budget, we have it as if we're having another year of free meals. However, if they do not approve that, then at the revision, we would go back and revise the budget as if we have paid meals again. So it's next month, normally you'd be approving meal prices. I can't say whether or not you will be. We don't know. So.
So, you know, with that, our free and reduced percentage is based on that. So is that still impacting our general fund revenues?
Yes, exactly. So if we don't, one thing that is a positive is Alyssa and Sarah have been working on a new software to get applications in. We, in the past, had used Skyward and it's kind of clunky, you know, clicking. This software that Sarah researched and found, it will link into Skyward, but it sounds like it's a lot easier to use. I haven't seen it myself, but they've given me some updates on it. So hopefully that would help our percentages and getting more applications in.
Okay. Because like for the first year, they kind of matched our previous year, right? Didn't they?
There was talk of that.
Well, that never happened.
Well, then they gave us additional federal revenue in order to try to make up for it, but with that came restrictions. It wasn't as easy as this will make you whole. You can use it on the expenses you were.
So it's still an issue out there.
But yeah, barring the additional waiver, right now there is no remedy for the fact that we couldn't get everybody who needed to fill out the paperwork so that we get the qualifications, you know, for the budget based on prior year's paperwork. We can't fill that gap.
Right.
There's no way to fill that gap. Feds aren't doing it unless they come through with free meals, but then we just kick the can another year forward and we got the same issue next year.
Yes.
The other thing you need to be thinking about is that if they go back to having students pay for their meals, the price of foods and goods right now have gone up significantly, as has everything else. And so the board is really going to have to take a serious look at that to make sure that our fund balance for food service can cover it.
Yep.
And so you'll have to look very carefully at the prices of those meals, because you just really have to hope that these free meals continue.
And that's a good point. So our reimbursement rate for the free meals is higher than what our paid price was. So it was a blessing in disguise. Whether or not they continue, we'll see. So it was a blessing in that it helped the food service fund, but it hurt us on compensatory. So
One, the thread that runs through almost all of these bullet points is that either the federal government, the combination of the pandemic, and either the federal government and or the state government have given us a series of unfunded, I don't know that they're necessarily mandates, but situations that, you know, that put us behind the 8 ball over and over and over again through no fault of anybody in the administration, right? It's just.
It makes your job a lot more complicated, that's for sure.
Particularly the state government.
Yeah.
To be sitting here in the middle of June with no idea what our funding is unconscionable, and our entire state legislature, in my opinion, should be held accountable for it. It's ridiculous.
And with no idea in sight that they will get
Correct.
together and do anything.
It's irresponsible governing, in my opinion.
In Fund 4, school readiness is at a deficit. It is allowed to go deficit, but after so many years, the general fund is required to eliminate that deficit. However, same as the general fund, we're hoping that that will actually end better than what we had projected. So then hopefully that concern will go away. The building construction fund, it does look a little confusing in that it is negative, but that's because when I did the budget revision, I had a cash draw schedule. And it's just like a budget, right? It's an estimate. And so if they don't draw the funds as anticipated, and then they actually give me an updated draw schedule where they are drawing the funds, then it looks like I'm going negative. But I just want you to not be concerned. It's all a timing thing. So when I do the revision, it should all clear itself out. And then nothing really to note on the debt service funds or the OPEB trust fund. Any questions? That was very, very quick, but there's a lot more detail in the document.
Marcia, I've got I do have a couple questions on the general fund. Of course, I'm really concerned about going into next year with a $1.8 million deficit, going backwards on our fund reserve, kind of hanging our hats on hoping we get more students, hoping the state might give us some more dollars, and hoping that our current fiscal year comes in better than anticipated. But what happens if none of those come around? What's the backup plan? What's the plan of the board then, so that we don't go down to this kind of large deficit spending? And then I forget what the level is when you reach a certain level that the state kind of takes over governing what we do. Do you remember, or do you know what?
Statutory operating debt, so you get to a level of 2.5%, I believe, of your expenses, and we're not near that.
Sure.
But the board would, like for instance in this, if worst case scenario happened where we spent every penny of the 1.8, it would come out of our fund balance, and then we could plan for that the following year. What reductions do we need to make to eliminate that deficit? And then also, what assumptions do we have that may increase that deficit for the following year?
So I wonder if, do we need to consider reversing our thinking that we adjust according to what the knowns are, and if we're blessed with student enrollment, current fiscal year coming out better than what we thought, then we look at adding a program or something like that. I'm concerned about spending money that we don't have. And the $7 million at a fund balance when our monthly operating budget is, we're talking days.
That's right. Right.
So I'm concerned about a lot of hopes versus making the moves and decisions now that provide fiscal responsibility, and make some changes if some positive things come in. So I have a hard time supporting just to go. Our current fund balance is at what percent?
10, I believe it's 10.5.
Yeah. So to chop away 20% of that, we're only another couple more years. Granted, we likely won't do that, but that's a big bite.
Right. And the only reason why it is that high is because last year we put quite a bit in because of the CARES funds. So I hear what you're saying, but hopefully this won't happen again, where we're going back or I can find other alternatives with the CARES funds that we have. I just feel like I'm learning all the time about new ways we can be using these CARES funds. And I know it is kind of kicking the can down the road, but if I can use them or the district can use them, I'd like to use them to help solve some of this problem.
And if I can add, you have asked many, many times in how we can use them. And approximately a week ago, they told you that in 10 days they would tell her if our application was accepted, which they keep kicking us down the can down the road as well, on this, and so we haven't heard.
I did get an email today. They were asking more questions. They didn't say approve or deny. So we're gonna have to follow up with them and respond to their questions and then go from there. But
So is that approval in this budget already?
no.
Oh, so how much would that change this budget?
So there would be a couple of sections at the high school that we could potentially code to that learning loss. We estimated that to be around a couple $100,000. And then just, I mean, like I said, it's always trying to figure out new ideas to spend that money. So
Isn't it about 1.1 million though over the next 2 years?
that's what we could spend if we wanted to, because in total, those funds are 2.2 million and they're kind of restricted. So we're trying to find ways to spend them. And one of the thoughts was if we use 1.1 and 1.1 the next year, like how can we fill those buckets?
So my suggestion might
that's what
be,
you
with
were
all
saying.
these unknowns, is we approve this as is right now, and then we relook at it at our July board meeting and see what's come to be, because we'll know for sure then if we get any more state funding. You'll know about the CARES fund. I don't know if we'll have any better idea on enrollment, probably not.
Yeah, we normally don't have a good idea on that until they actually show up.
End of August.
So I wasn't, so what do you suggest, we approve it now, and then if none of these things change in July, then what?
Then we relook at it and we
have to go back in. Again, some of the stuff that we rejected, I mean, there were some fairly comprehensive proposals on the table to reduce costs further that, collectively, we all eventually got on board with, but, we had certain things like, one of the, I think the bigger things that was in there as we went through it was, sort of a commitment by the board to keep the class sizes in the elementary schools at a very specific level, which meant not reducing the non-tenured staff significantly. That, there was a pretty hefty dollar amount that we could have saved if we'd have gone down that route and still kept the class sizes within acceptable levels. But, as a board, we decided not to do that. But I mean, there isn't $600,000 just waiting there for us to discover it, right? We're gonna have to, if we go back in, we're gonna have to surgically remove stuff like that again. Because my fear.
The only thing out there that could save us is if they do have a special session, and that's looking less and less likely.
Well, my other fear at extending the federal dollars out is, all you're really doing then is you're sort of
Patching
taking
it.
Tylenol for a rotting tooth. You're not really fixing the issue, so it has the potential to become worse, not better. So it's ugly no matter which way you look at it, but I think, I'm kind of with you. I mean, if we see it in July and none, we've heard the word hope like 6 times. We've got hope this happens, we hope this happens, we hope this happens. Well, if none of those things happen, then we have to kick hope to the curb and we got to take out our pencils again. In July, that's kind of
Well,
where
and
I'm
another
at.
thing that you can say is that unless it's an absolute essential hire for legal purposes, that we hold off on hiring until we know better as well. It isn't best for the district because the best candidates are getting hired now. And, but you can say that as a board if that's the direction you want the administration to go, as we wait and see what happens.
The case I would make for the federal dollars would be that it buys us the time to see what our enrollment trends like in a post-COVID environment, and that can remedy some of the situation, and thus that's perhaps practically an intelligent use of that fund, that those dollars for at least a year to kind of buy us the time to catch up on everything we're trying to do from a district perspective. So I think I could get my head around trying to recode as much of that as we could with that insight. What I don't want to do is get 2 years down the road and close Harrison, because we run out of federal money and all of a sudden the music stopped and there's no chair for us.
Yeah, we can't let that happen.
So there's no silver bullet here.
Well, and hopefully next year, again, that hope word, but we do hope that it's going to be a new normal that isn't going to be like what we've dealt with the last 2 years. We know it won't be exactly the way it used to be, but that it'll be more of a traditional school year where kids are able to come every single day.
And less unknowns. I have never had so many unknowns.
Well, even
Well,
now
then-
at the federal level, there
and-
possibly could be more money from the feds for safe schools, and how are we gonna use that, and where are we gonna put that? So there's a lot of,
Yep,
It
there's
does sound
a lot of that stuff out there, and then the other, kind of wild variable that's out there, though, we gotta think about on the other side is things that we have in the budget for this year and for next year that historically haven't gone up significantly in cost, will go up significantly in cost. And so one example, Marcy showed me Friday, whatever day it was, our PNC, our building insurance, just for insuring
we're gonna
our
be talking
buildings.
about that briefly, yes.
Yeah, is off the charts expensive comparatively. Part of that's because we made the buildings bigger and more expensive to replace by sinking all the money into them. But part of it's just the cost of PNC insurance has gone up.
And the cost of replacing.
Right.
Yeah.
Because of building costs, building materials and all that. Like, for example, my house, I have to insure it for 35 or 40% more than it actually is worth. Because that's what it would cost to build it now.
The communications work is key, and I also think that I would love to sometime hear more about where our efforts are at with our online schooling options, because when you look at our data, we can talk about losing kids to COVID, but our data really shows that we're losing kids to online learning options. I think we're missing a huge opportunity if we don't put that at the top of the priority list, spend some money. I mean, those kinds of things I could get behind going into fund balance for when we're investing in something that could get kids back.
Well, and the irony, I was talking to Lane before the meeting, we don't have to go into the fund balance for that. We can actually use the federal dollars for that because that's learning loss and class sizes and all of that stuff. I mean, that's easy to get,
And it would be great to have Andrea and her team come and do maybe a presentation in July.
Yeah.
Or August in what they're doing.
Yeah,
with
we haven't
online
heard about
because-
that since
Yep.
we approved it.
And I know they're incredibly busy.
It's been a long time.
And I'm just speaking off the cuff and not knowing enough about it, but to me, that's, even if it has to be a new position, because how do you expect somebody who's already got a full-time job, oh, and by the way, also start an online school? Why would we not invest in a position that was a temp position to
We've
get that?
invested in it, and so now we
And
need
that's
to
probably where we
report
need to
to
hear
you
more
what.
about it, yeah. Because again, if we're investing in it and it's not
Yeah,
coming
when
to
was that we
fruition,
approved that?
that's, we
Was
need to
that
talk
before you were
about
on the
that.
board, that we approved it?
I can give you a quick update and I'll ask Andrea and Christina Langer to come. We started with 6, I believe it was 6 online courses this fall. We had 10 this spring. The goal is in the next year to continue to add and within 3-year period to have a fully comprehensive online high school. So the priority has been given. The fall of 24 is the ultimate goal because we continue to build. This also becomes a resource issue. So when you look at having to provide comprehensive classes within building, so what we have right now is we have teachers who are assigned subject areas. They have taken on additional assignment to teach an online section. So we've embedded it when we can into their high school schedule. However, on top of that now, basically teaching an additional period or hour. So we have a whole online compensation. It's in the certified bargaining agreement that we've approved. But at the end of the spring, we were up to 10, and they continue to build. The goal beyond that will also then be to create, if you look at a real other area of interest is 6th, 7th, and 8th graders. So how do we expand that? Jessica Hopojoki has started as students have left to go to a Connections Academy or to try something else. Typically, they get so many months in and they fail, or they're struggling and then they want to come back in. Well, it's very difficult to come back in mid-semester or mid-trimester. So we're working with Jessica, who does have online curriculum, to create a soft landing for those students. So they can come in, they can start to access that curriculum, they can start earning credit, depending on what grade level they're at, with the reintroduction back to their building level that may be.
I'm sure there's all kinds of good stuff happening. I don't want to say it's not, but when we, and
I
we
think
love
we
our
just
kids in
need
our
to report
classrooms.
that.
but
Yeah,
we
so we
have
can
the
have,
high
we can
school
ask,
come and
we can
report.
have that. I don't know that July, probably more like August, but I do want you to know it has what you've approved, it started and it's growing. So, and then the numbers of our students continuing to go there, we have them coming, so.
Do we know if we're attracting kids that weren't in our school before, or is it more of the kids that were already there?
So we had a lot of students leaving off campus for an hour, potentially for online at CLC.
Okay.
Right, so we're giving those opportunities within the building.
Okay.
So that was the first priority, because we saw a lot of students leaving campus, basically to access that open schedule or to be able to have a job. So, but the goal is to capture, because we looked at, like we pointed out in the data, there was about 64 students lost from fall, or spring to fall, just to a nearby online, so.
Okay.
We'll continue to work. But just so you know, was approved, it is working, there's 10 courses that just got completed this spring. Thank you.
Just coming back to general fund, I'm not comfortable with approving something that then we later, maybe we'll come back and discuss and maybe make some changes to bring it into balance. I think that was our work to do in advance. I'm not comfortable with, and this is, you're just providing the numbers, Marcy. So it's out of your hands. It's in the board's hand, but spending money we don't have is a slippery slope I don't want to be a part of. So.
I think there's an interesting opportunity to look at the risk involved. So if you're looking at mitigating a risk of, we've got all of these unknowns, what's the percentage of opportunity that this is going to actually happen? If it's, 20%, then yeah, we should not bank on that. But if we feel like there's a reasonable, a risk that we're comfortable with, whatever that percentage is, in saying we'll revisit this at a later date because we feel comfortable with that risk. And on the other side, I think there's a risk to throwing some of these systems into chaos by making whatever kind of adjustments within that budget and having to rebuild if we have to go back to it. It's not an easy, let's subtract and let's add back in. It's a lot of chaos, and that causes friction and, a lot of expense too.
It's tough to cut, and yet say, but bring your kids here. So we're in a tough spot.
Yeah, it's a tough spot, I agree.
It is a very tough spot, because we thought we were in a good place with this budget, and then surprises happened, and now we're not in a good place with this budget. So we haven't had any time to go back and work on it since.
Yeah, the only other thing is, I want to kind of go back to the 10% number. That's obviously, from a policy perspective, that's something that we were striving for. But I think we also need to keep in mind that 10.8 isn't a real number, right? That's artificially inflated based on the infusion of those federal dollars. So the reality is we weren't meeting that. Anyway, we were on the pathway towards meeting it, which was I was new to the board when we first voted on that. And right, the idea was to get on a trajectory to get there over a certain period of time.
Correct.
And suddenly we leapfrogged right to it. And so I think it heightens the level of concern around a little bit. I'm kind of in the middle, big surprise, but I think we're, having been through this budget with Marcy a couple of times and having sat in the sessions when we've done them collectively, I don't know how much scalpel work there is left to do on this thing. It feels like there's only chainsaw stuff left to do.
Well, I think,
Other than the hiring freeze and a couple of other things, like you did the whole supply, thing. I mean, we did all the small measures that we could, that we'd hoped would collectively create some critical mass towards savings, and it did, just not enough by the time the other stuff stacked up. And then the fact that as we all try to sit here and try to do our jobs, everybody above us in the governmental chain isn't doing their job. That's problematic for this body. And I know I'm a broken record repeating that, but I get tired of us not controlling the narrative that it is not the fault of this administration or of this school board that we're in the situation that we're in. And I also realize that at the state level, education is their largest single line item expense, and that it's, never fun to open that up and start throwing more money at it. But good Lord, if you can't call a special session on account of, or for the benefit of the children of your state, there's something fundamentally wrong with you as a legislator.
Especially when you had the agreement. You had an agreement.
No, it's ridiculous. It doesn't make any sense.
I also want to reiterate that we have some of the smallest class sizes in the whole area. And that's something we're very proud of, and something that we don't brag enough about. Because our elementary class sizes are the smallest that I can find. And we are proud of that. And we tried to conserve that and protect that in our budgeting this year. And I think we did a darn good job, actually. We just had a surprise that came up again, and we're just trying to address it. And I agree, there's all these things, the what ifs, that should have been taken care of that haven't been for us. Now, part of the issue that we have tonight is that we need to bring to you a balanced budget, or bring to you a budget that the board is comfortable with by June 30th.
That's statutory?
Yes.
So, that's it. We can't just delay it till the next meeting.
And so that's why we had all the preliminary meetings. We've been meeting on budgets since January.
Yep.
That's why we brought the preliminary budget to you last month. And that's why it's here today. And when the final things came out, it came out somewhat different. And, but we need to approve a preliminary budget. But if you're not happy with where it's at, we need some guidance on what you want us to do to help reduce that, to not do the count on the hopes, we hope, and the what ifs.
Well, and then wouldn't we also need a special meeting by the 30th in order to approve that? If we don't do anything tonight,
If you don't
right?
approve it
Yeah.
tonight, then we need to have some guidance, get back with our scalpels or whatever, and have a meeting by the 30th of June.
I mean, to Tom's point, I don't love the idea, but I don't love any of the choices here. You know, I'm sorry, it contradicts what you said, Director Nelson, but I think I like the idea of at least, you know, we're at what, the 13th today? So we push something out to the 27th, that's 2 weeks from today. That gives 2 more weeks for a couple of the ships to maybe come in. Particularly your approval on what we can and can't do in terms of your financial gymnastics with the gears and ESSER dollars. And then that maybe will at least reframe the discussion. But the only problem with doing it that way is now we're under the gun. We're literally sitting here with sand pouring out of the hourglass, and whatever we have in front of us is what we have in front of us. So it's kind of a double-edged sword, in my opinion.
I'm fine with doing that if that's
I'm good
what you
either
like.
way.
We could look at what impact freezing positions would be, freezing hiring, and what those would be, and if we want to do that or not. And we'd have a little more time.
But I mean, and
We'll let that workshop.
we gotta not lose sight of the fact that this food service thing could be a really, really big deal.
That's why I brought that up, because that could be huge. The price of meals could be extremely high next year based on what food prices are right now and transportation costs.
I actually am gone the last week in June too, so I don't know what everyone else's schedule
Yeah, I guess,
is like.
Tom, I'm kind of curious, I mean, to get some more of your thoughts on what you think next steps should be in terms of, you know, if we don't approve it tonight, what do you think we should do? I mean, because approving it tonight is not approving the budget, it's approving the stage of the budget, but we could approve it with guidance attached.
Yep,
We
absolutely.
could do that.
Maybe that would, I don't know.
What would the guidance be?
Good question. You're the man, right? I mean, it would be find us some additional savings. Again, I've been racking my brain since last week when I was looking at this, and the only significant dollar amounts I could see was that increase in class sizes and reducing the non-tenured elementary school staff.
We could say cut the deficit. We don't have to say find additional savings. Cut the deficit spending by this many, and it could be a combination in the next 2 weeks of some additional funding, CARES funding, and cuts.
And then I guess that begs the question, then does that satisfy those of us that have concerns about, you know, using that soft money, if you will, to that end? I mean, like I said, I'm in support of that idea because it buys us a little bit more time for more of these pieces to become a little bit clearer so that we can go into next year with probably a much better handle on what we need to do. And then I think it probably frames the longer term discussion that this body has to have about when, where, and how to position an operating referendum. And we can run from that all day, but we know that date with Destiny is 2024 or 25, no matter how you slice it. There's no getting out of that.
So if we look at the current budget that you have here, gotta find it again. I lost it. Our initial unreserved, so if we just unassigned was,
It's projected to be about 8.9 at the end of this year, and then it'd go down to 7.
So then if, let's say, SHIP comes in on the application and the gymnastics with the federal dollars, then do you have even just a back of the napkin idea of what that would do to that percentage if we were able to assign that money
So
for fiscal year 22, 23?
at least I believe that one change I already made, so at least a quarter, 250,000. And then if we looked at a couple other areas, it could be a potential about 500,000.
So those would equate to basis points, so 0.5%.
And
So
we-
it'd take us up to over 8, somewhere around 8.7 potentially.
So yeah, it would go from 1.8 deficit to 1.3.
Well, the fact is, the administration did their job. They met with us multiple times and put the menu, so to speak, on the table.
For sure.
Of what could, so then it's on us, I think, at this point, you guys. We have to go back at that list, because I think we each had things we said, no, we don't want to do that, we don't want to do that. Well, it's time to make the tough decision. It stinks, but to me, it's on us right now. You guys put the potential cuts out there, or the potential reductions, or, whatever it might be. And it's not easy work, but it's on us to pick an item on that list then, if we expect to have this closer to balanced.
What was our ending budget balance that we came up with after doing all that initially? What was it gonna be? Was it gonna, because we were gonna
Initially,
deficit
We
spend
brought
still.
you a balanced budget at one of the meetings where we met individually with board members.
And we said,
brought a
no, we
balanced
don't want
Oh, it was
justice.
balanced.
Now, in fairness, there have been a
Nobody-
few things that have popped up
There
since then
have
have
been a
thrown that
few
out of
things
whack.
that-
So
you bet.
that's probably off by about $275,000 or so with,
No,
by
I
the time you
think
put the
it's off by
insurance
$1
in
million.
there and,
About $1 million.
oh, okay, I was way off. But
But with the size budget, I mean, $1 million is a lot of money, but the size budget, it's a small percentage.
So, okay, so what if, the unassigned, if we got it to an ending balance of 8 million, so we're still deficit spending 900,000, but we know that there's some possible upside based on the audit and based on federal dollars and enrollment and everything, so we're not taking as big of a risk. What if we approve this with, in the July, we're gonna get that ending balance, and then we can all go back, because I can't do it right now, I don't remember all those things. We can go back and I'll look at what we would cut and have a meeting offline. Not a school board meeting, but we can give Marcy
working sessions.
and, yeah, Angie?
Just so you know, there's a lot of statutory stuff with tenured and non-tenured staff with time. Like probationary staff, with the whole process for tenured staff that we have to follow, so just
Part of the issue too is we tenured those staff at the last board meeting.
Mm.
can't even, so they would all be tenured staff, except for.
Yeah.
So we'd be looking at.
And they were the staff that we would have,
Yeah, and at this point in time, I can't see changing our staffing that we currently have. We can't do that. I mean, we've already told them they've had jobs and stuff, so that wouldn't be part of the look, but there are the new hires that we could do.
you could hold on those until you know more. Unless it's,
Can Angie come up so she can be heard?
Angie, can you come up? She can't hear you on the tape. Yeah, we would need to know that right away, because it would be like administrative positions that are being hired and those kinds of things, so that,
Yeah, I was just
'Cause
saying
it'll
that,
take
yeah,
serious
if we
realigning.
do anything with staffing whatsoever, we would need to, like, have a meeting like tomorrow to make that decision. Because we're actively recruiting, interviewing, and hiring for all budgeted positions, based on our previous conversations, so that was all I had to say.
Well, the other way we can look at that is, this is why we have a fund balance, is for surprises that come up, and we have to use this fund balance at this point and work on cuts as we can and scrub. I mean, there's probably some savings somewhere in there that doesn't deal with
And you
staff.
can look at any positions that resign at this point and
Yeah.
not rehiring them.
I guess my only question is if you pushed it to the 27th and there's no answers, I mean.
Yeah.
I don't see any tangible benefit to doing that. It just puts us under the gun and puts us exactly where we're sitting right now, as far as I'm concerned.
Well, we'd have to be willing to make some changes. We're
Yep.
just gonna come back in 2 weeks and we go, oh, it didn't get any better. Okay, we approve. I mean, we should have a decision, we should be cutting, or, I hate to keep using that word, but we
You're
finding
a mind
money or.
reader. Thank you very
reducing
much.
expense.
The other thing too, the administrative team is at the Sourcewell retreat next week, and so, you know, our days are limited that we can even meet and do this work.
Well, a balanced budget without the use of those federal dollars is a fairy tale.
That's, the 1.8, I mean, you brought up the amount, it's, you know, a little over 1% of our budget. I know it's a big number, but overall, our budget is, we do have a large budget.
Yeah, that's my point exactly. It's eating in $2 million is 20% of our fund balance, our piggy bank, but the 2 million is only 2% of our operating budget. That's where I think that's what needed to be corrected. Its piggy bank isn't that large. And I hate to see us always get into this, well, we're out of days, we're out of time, we're out of this, we'll fix it and we'll hope for that. At some point in time, it sure be nice to see that we reverse that process.
In defense, though, we brought a balanced budget. We brought you a balanced budget, and we're asked to change several items. And we did, we adjusted it, and we brought you very close to a balanced budget last month, and a big surprise happened, and here we are. But we have worked our tail off since January this year. I've never worked so hard on a budget in all my life. And somewhere, when we bring a budget, you have to trust us that this is the best, this is what we believe is best to bring you that balanced budget. And we brought it.
I tend to agree. I think the team was really creative in the way you approached it. You listened to all the input and made accommodations that weren't necessarily there the first time around. I'm really pleased with it. I'm not pleased that this is where we are, but I'm pleased with all the work that went into it. And I think it was well thought out.
It's hard to, I get that it's hard to accept, but if this truly is as good as it gets, we may have to approve this. And then again, it's on us as a body. Next year's budget process starts next month then. You know, we cannot, maybe we can't even wait till January. And I think I've already heard that from the administration, so.
And just as the going out superintendent, I think that now is the time that I have to say this. We are one of the only school districts in the state without an operating levy referendum. And the saddest thing to me about the last 6 years is that I have not been able to add one thing. It's always we're trying to manage this budget with expenses going up, and we're trying to do it without money. The creative problem solving that we have to do here financially is just unbelievable. And then you throw COVID into this thing, which totally messed it up. And we're doing it where districts have $748 on the average, $748 per pupil unit in their schools. That's the average in the state, and we have zero of that. We have to get to a point very soon to say, we can't keep cutting our way out of this. Because we aren't adding the programs, the academic programs that our kids want and need and deserve. And the most disappointing thing that I can say is the fact that I feel like that's where I've failed, is that I haven't been able to turn this around. And we were doing it, by golly, before COVID happened. We did the budget twice in 2020, and once we actually were adding, and then COVID hit, and we had to redo the whole thing. We can't keep cutting our way out of this. We are one of the best school districts in the state of Minnesota, and we can't keep cutting our way out of this if we want to stay there.
Well, I think we've had a lot of discussion without anything on the table, I guess. Don't know if the support is there or not, but I'm gonna throw out a motion that we approve this preliminary budget as presented.
I'll second it.
Any addendum to that at all as far as scrubbing for?
I think, like I said, the
We can do
scrubbing
that.
starts happening next month. I mean, as we can, you know, it's not that I'm saying, I'm not gonna put a nuance out there that I expect that we change the budget in July, but I do think that we all know that there's work that needs to happen. We need a board retreat, or we need a budget workshop, or something in the future, and that's not a part of my motion, but I'm just saying it as part of the discussion. We can't keep kicking the can down the road. We have to support our administration and the good suggestions they've made, and either make the tough choices that they've put in front of us, or figure out where more money is gonna come from and where more students are gonna come from. And I know that none of that is simple answers, but that's the work that we need to do at this table, or maybe in some workshopping outside of these meetings.
I would like to add to that, that I think that that needs to be the #1 priority moving forward as we look at this, looking at this budget and how we're going to address it. I think it has to be the priority. And a piece of that is the communication plan that we're talking about. That's a piece of the greater plan. The big umbrella is how are we going to continue to do the great work that we're doing in these economic times, and how are we going to adjust the budget? And the communications piece is a great start.
And we need a strategic plan, because that's how you make decisions about your
That's right.
priorities, right? We need a plan, and then the
Right.
budget follows the plan where your priorities are.
Yep.
I agree. Okay, so I hear we have a first from Director Sjogren, a second from Director Spear to approve the preliminary budget as presented. Any further discussion?
I have to agree with where Tom's at. Right now, I'm not feeling comfortable with approving a budget without being able to, at least where the budget is right now, or this line item, without being able to first look at the tenets of when the balanced budget was brought to us before. I feel a little unprepared, I guess, without being able to look at that. Maybe I should have done that before coming into this board meeting, but I didn't. And so I can't feel comfortable about that without, I guess, just making sure that if there's any pruning that we can do at this stage, and if it means we have to take a little bit more time between now and June 30th, just to make sure there's not something in the bushes there that we can prune. I think we do that, and I think we owe it to our students to do that, to figure out a way, and not just kick the can down the road again into next year.
The biggest difference from when it was balanced to now is, we did have more section reductions. That's the biggest difference. There was some other minor changes, but that's the biggest difference, is the number of sections we're reducing.
I'd like to learn more about the hiring freeze. I don't know if we need to sit and process that right now, but some of those questions I'd like to learn more what that means before I give a thumbs up or a thumbs down, to be honest.
Well, I'm not particularly happy with this deficit spending, but I understand it, and I understand there's the things that are out there look to me to be more upsides than downsides. I mean, one very specific one that sounds probably 80%, 70%. So I'm gonna vote in favor of this motion, and know that we're using our fund balance at this time to avert cuts in teachers and a lot of anxiety in the next couple months to our staff and our students. Anyway, let's vote. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Those not, same sign.
Aye.
So 4-2. With Director Hagelin and Director Blacklands voting against. More discussion to follow.
Just as a postscript, the fiscal conservative inside me is screaming a little bit right now, but in the end, I think ordinarily kicking the can a year is a bad idea, but this particular year and this particular time, with all these particular variables, with a transition of leadership, with the pandemic, with all of these things, I can rationalize it to myself. That's how I'll sleep tonight.
Okay, next up, we have our liabilities and worker compensation insurance renewal.
Right. I'm not sure if everybody has met Jake.
yeah.
Jake, yeah?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
We're all friends.
Jake
So he
Hoosier.
says.
Yeah.
He's saying, why couldn't I have been before the budget approved?
I got a tough one to walk into on that one. It's,
He's the reason we have all these budget problems. No, I'm just kidding.
thank you.
Great setup.
Should we go outside for a minute?
So in your packet is a summary of the insurance. There is a substantial increase in our property liability, and it is due to the change in the value and also, as Kevin had alluded to, the change in our property pricing. And you can, Jake met with Damien at ICS to figure out what that number should be.
About a month ago, just to update all of the square footages. You know, there's obviously been pieces that have been taken down and put up, and then, you know, second levels going on and things like that. So I wanted to make sure that all of the square footages matched exactly what it was, particularly on the finished buildings. And then I asked him for a cost per square foot that we should use that would be, you know, adequate to put the building back if something were to happen. He shared that $310 a square foot would be a good number to use. And then we also used $325 on the high school, just given the pool and some of the other technology things that are involved in that building.
Performing Arts Center.
Yes. So, I mean, the rate didn't change. The rate hasn't changed in 4 years with the exception of 2020 when it down 5%. So, I mean, I think everybody can validate that insurance costs haven't stayed flat for 4 years for anybody. I mean, businesses, homeowners, things like that. So I'm really pleased with the insurance provider that they see the big picture and the long-term relationship that Hanover's had with the Brainerd School District, and they kept it flat. And I know that this budget is a big deal, and we wanted to try to do everything we can do to keep our end flat as possible. We don't have to have these higher values. I mean, we don't have to, but I feel like that's my duty as your agent to make sure that we're protecting the assets of the district the right way. So I would have any discussion on that possible, you know, to make everybody feel good about it. I mean, it's a big number, I understand that, but you've also increased the asset size here tenfold, and it's beautiful. And we want to make sure that if something happens, that it's can be put back the way that it was in a timely manner.
So if we did look at a lesser value, we'd be taking on the risk then of if something were to happen, we wouldn't be fully covered. So, and I did ask him too, like if prices were to go down, you know, does our premium then go down? Yes. So if next year, for whatever reason, if the values were, you know, $275, then our premium would go down.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's a chance of that, but
I know.
it seems like there should be some moderation in costs and all that, but who knows?
I would love to see that. I mean, it's been a challenging conversation with a lot of the folks that we represent, just to make sure that you're adequately covered, but not going to the point where, you know, it's unaffordable too. I mean, there has to be that right balance there for sure.
And then the cyber piece is just, I'm a part of MASBO, our association, and there was emails sent out. Several people couldn't even get cyber insurance. So like the cyber policy is hard to get right now for school districts. So I know that is also a high increase, but luckily we were able to at least get one.
With very, very similar terms from the expiring policy, most were going up with, if you had a $25,000 deductible, it was gonna go to 50. Sublimits would come back down to, if you had $1 million before, it would be the 250, and then the premiums were doubling. And there were 5 carriers that wouldn't even quote that we sent it to, just because there were some things that will be in place but are not in place yet with respect to the multi-factor authentication. So I know the technology staff is working diligently to make sure that that happens, and that will provide us some more options too, once that's in place for the next go around with this. And then the crime policy is a 3-year policy, so that hasn't changed. The builder's risk policy was a 3-year reporting policy, which is super unique. Most of them write them on a one-site basis, where this was constructed so that it was a 3-year rolling, same rate, only reporting on the stuff that's actually going on, and then reducing that limit when the buildings are finished. So that was unique, which it's great that the same builder's risk carrier provides the same building coverage. So it's really easy if you have a building that's brand new. You know, you buy your builder's risk policy for the materials that are sitting on site, or partially constructed but not yet paid for, or fully constructed and not yet paid for, in case there's a weather incident or a theft incident. And I'm taking this a lot further than I need to, but I want you to know. But when you get to an addition piece where you deal with existing and new, there could be a lot of finger pointing between, well, that's really builder's risk. Well, no, that's really already there. And yeah, but we weren't gonna, you know, so back and forth. It's nice that the same carrier provides that same coverage for both pieces, so.
And then as far as work comp goes, our payroll goes up, then our premium goes up, and then also our mod is going up too, so.
A couple of construction-related injuries that we're all gonna be really excited when construction's over, for a lot of reasons. But the underwriter did offset the increase in experience mod by applying more schedule credit to try to keep that rate as seamless as possible. Granted the payroll increase, but.
Okay, thank you.
So with the keep in mind that Janet handed out for the last vote our ISD 181 issued scalpels. So with that, are we tied to one company, or is this, I'm still new enough where this is consistent and we.
Jake does all the shopping for us.
Okay,
if that's what
okay, so
you're
that,
asking.
okay, that helps.
Yep.
So you're doing the shopping,
Yes.
so, okay.
Absolutely. And with the construction being finished and not having to have the builder's risk piece that we talked about, that will open the door for, and there's only a handful of carriers that'll even touch a school district anyway, but that will give us a little more leeway. And then there was a claim from a few years back that was preventing some things too, and that's off of there now as well, which will help a lot. So I feel confident that when we talk in February about some things that we'll have some other opportunities and options.
So when you shopped, like the existing carrier stepped up and worked with you to get it, right?
Without a doubt.
Yeah, yeah.
We spent a month going back and forth. So, I mean, the average trend right now is 5 to 8%. And I mean, that's initially, it came back at 5, and I just said that's not good enough. We gotta do better than that.
So legitimately, as I understand it, the only functional cost reduction possibility in here is for the district to assume more financial risk by, it's like, you know, do you want to up your car insurance deductible from $250 to $5,000? Right? We could do that by reducing the value at which we insure the buildings, which means if a tornado comes through and wipes out the high school, we would be on the hook for whatever insurance doesn't cover up to the replacement cost. So that's
Kinda save
about the
where
only
we
place
had
we could
to
apply
tackle.
the ISD 181 scalpel if we wanted to.
Right
The
now, we
rest-
have coverage for $325 per square foot at the high school, correct?
Correct, yep.
Should that tornado come through.
Yep. Means we can rebuild it.
Yeah, and maybe it wouldn't look identical, and maybe it wouldn't need to because there's some older parts that were retrofitted to, you know, make it work, but,
And then, correct me again if I say something wrong here, Marcy, but I think when next year rolls around, Sarah, you know, whoever takes over for you, we got to get multi-factor authentication implemented ASAP, or we won't even be able to get cyber insurance next year.
Correct. If I can speak to that very quickly, we have a brainstorming meeting actually Wednesday morning, and we're planning on having most of it in place for the summer staff, the essential summer staff, within the next month, and then ready to roll in the fall with the staff, with the teachers.
thank you so much for your end of that. I mean, that was,
It was, we were on some interesting
absolutely,
calls.
no, it was great to work together on that deal for sure, and,
Yes.
yeah.
And as it has been for everybody, that's an adjustment for staff when you go to that model, but the reality is virtually the entire private sector has already gone to multi-factor authentication for stuff. So it is what it is.
And there's more criteria with the school district based upon revenues. So, you know, you might say, you know, a pillager or somebody, well, they don't have to do this. Well, they don't, because they don't have that level of revenue that Brainerd does. So, with that gives some more, you know, some things that have to be in place and less leeway with, the size. But I mean, it doesn't, you can open up any news publication and find some type of hacking, some ransom, some phishing, some whatever it might be, and, you know, it's not a small deal.
I think
Clearly
it's
in our
good that
Brainerd
we're
Lakes
going-
area,
Going there, so, yeah.
we've seen a lot of it in a small
Jake,
segment.
I appreciate you. I know you're shopping and negotiating on our behalf, and thanks for the heads up details from both you and Marcy. I would move to approve the 23 liability and work comp insurance renewal as presented.
And I'll second that.
Right. We have a first from Director Hagelin, a second from Director Boyles. Any further discussion?
Thank you.
Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
If you do have another special meeting, do you want me to bring some different lower values, some, you know, maybe at a particular site or a different, you know, just,
My opinion.
okay.
I concur. I see no reason to run that extra risk.
It'd be our luck that the one we go with the lower would be where the tornado hit.
Exactly.
Exactly right.
We're already self-underwriting our own health benefits. I think that's enough risk for anybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank you.
for all your work. Next up, we have the audit, approval of the audit services.
You guys are gonna get sick of me tonight. So the audit is the same firm that we used last year. They sent us a proposal and I countered if they could match what we, you know, get from the state is 2%, so they did that. However, we do have to implement GASB 87, which is regarding leases this year, so you'll see that it's the 2% plus rate depending on how many leases they have to review. So it could be 1,000 to 2,000 more based on that. It's all new, so I can't even really tell you what they're gonna be doing. I know they have to review them and decide if they're gonna be part of the GASB 87 or not. So that is new for this year. And depending on how many we have, and my understanding is this is a kind of a one-time fee. Hopefully we wouldn't see that next year after it's implemented.
So it's implementing new rules that we have to follow.
New GASB standards, yes.
And you have an estimate on what that cost is?
1,000 to 2,000 she had
Dollars.
quoted me. Yep.
I mean,
Per lease.
For in total, and then if we get above 10 leases, then it's an hourly rate. So I
the
will.
reality is if we go with a new accounting firm, the cost of having somebody that's unfamiliar with our books go through it is gonna cost us more than $2,000.
Yeah.
I recommend approval.
And I did go out for RFPs last year, and they did lower their price with that, and so I think we're in market on that one.
I'll move to approve the contract for the audit services with Clifton Larson Allen as presented.
Second.
First from Director Boyles, a second from Director Hagelin. Any further discussion?
Marcy, did I hear right that you negotiated a 2% increase because that's what we got state funding, 2% on top of last year's cost? Just do that across.
I do, Tom, every time. I go, well, we only get 2% from the state, so.
Good job.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign, motion carries. Thank you. And next up, oh, it's still you, Marcy.
Yeah, I think it's just because I was on the agenda, they put my name
Yeah, it's like
behind
you're
it.
wearing your Tim Murphy costume tonight.
I put it all in one area. So the affidavit of candidacy, this is all new for me. So we are filing, it will begin August 2nd, closes August 16th. And this is just basically letting them know that we will be a part of the county election.
Okay, that's easy.
I would move to approve the resolution as presented.
A second.
Okay, first from Director Sjogren, a second from Director Spear. Any further discussion?
Just any school board candidate wannabes that are listening, keep in mind two things. One, go back and watch the last 12 meetings. And two, remember that there's a 2-year seat from Director Nystrom's thing, and that you have to specifically file your candidacy for that seat.
Correct.
Or the 3 4-year seats that are available. You can't just throw your hat in the ring. You got to pick if you're running for the 2-year seat.
Or the 4-year seat.
Yeah.
Yeah,
The
okay.
other thing I would like to bring up to the board, just for information, because Janet brought it to my attention, that if you ever want to have a primary for a school board election, you have to have that approved at the board level by April 15th. So no matter what, it'll just be a general election this time.
And many years ago, we voted on that, not to have primaries. Do you remember that?
But if you ever want to in the future, you have to have that
Thank you.
decided on by April 15th.
Okay, so this is a roll call vote as it's a resolution.
Kevin Boyles.
Yes.
Tom Hagelin.
Yes.
Ruth Nelson.
Yes.
Shanna Sjogren.
Yes?
Sarah Spear.
Yes.
Charles Blacklands.
Yes.
All in favor.
Approved unanimously. Okay, next up, we have the first reading of the revised MSBA Policy 605 Alternative Programs. And with Candace.
Good evening. As you can see on the red line masters, we have some updates to the MSBA Board Policy 605. They're really just some minor edits mostly. So there's a title change to Alternative Educational Services rather than Alternative Programs as it currently reads. So that's throughout the document. And then there is the addition of a Minnesota state statute that under the responsibility, that bullet 8A. So that really just defines any student who is 17 years or older, if they are asking to withdraw, that we offer them those alternative educational services. We talk about that with their parent and guardian. So as it is an existing policy, I think it only requires acceptance at the first of 2 readings, but open for any questions that you have.
I'm assuming we already do this new, right?
We do, yes. And I should mention I did work on this with our high school principals, with our LDC principal as well, and some of those things. Yep.
I'll make a motion to approve the first reading of the revised MSBA Policy 605.
I'll second. Oh, Tom got me.
So we have a first from Director Spear and a second from Director Hagelin. Any further discussion? A lot of motions tonight. Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you, Candace. And next up is our first reading of MSBA Policy 902. Use of school district facilities and equipment and the appendixes.
Good evening again.
Hi, Anne Marie.
Hi. So I have given everyone 3 sets of physical paper so we can kind of walk through this together. The primary reason for updating this policy right now is that at the last school board meeting, the board voted to allow alcohol under very specific circumstances at the Gitche Center for the Arts. So there's 3 policies in front of you, each of which, 2 of which were in existence previously, and we're making some changes to them. And then the third is a new policy, Appendix B, which spells out the requirements and procedure that we will utilize to determine if alcohol use would be allowed for an event.
And this was also in our board book, so hopefully we've all
Yes.
spent some time with it.
Yep. So within each, the first two policies that were already in existence, 902 and Appendix A, you'll see red line. Those are the changes that we are making. In Section 7, C is the primary one on the policy 902, the main policy. This was written primarily by our district attorney for us and reviewed by him again after we made some changes because of some of the procedural decisions that we had made as a group. There are a few other changes throughout the policy as well. Letter N in that same section is a defense and indemnity clause that the language that was recommended by our legal counsel, and it's common in contracts as a risk allocation mechanism. And then a few of the other changes are just primarily kind of cleaning up the way that we've been doing estimates of fees and having the order in which we do things with users. So I just made sure that that was all correct throughout the rest of this policy. Any questions on this first one about any of the red line items? One other change I should point out to our district insurance agent did review this as well. And in Section 7, number E, he had me add a waiver of subrogation for events involving the service of alcohol. And then I'll move on to the second edited policy, which is Appendix A. And you'll see mostly just like I was talking about earlier, where we, the order in which we have a potential user fill out a facility request form, and then, after they accept our estimate of fees, they need to sign a facility user agreement. So I just corrected some of that language to the way that we have been using those documents. And then the other ask that I have within this section is currently at the end of the section is a fee schedule. That was a detailed fee schedule of 3 pages, and what I've done is cross that off. And I want to keep that on a separate document that will title Facility Use Fee Schedule. And then we also are working we're working on updating these slightly just because there's a few things that I don't think were quite correct or things that we think need to change. There won't be a lot of changes in this section, but we have a whole separate policy for the Gitches eBay pricing structure and how we want to approach that. And we've gotten a little bit more complex, so we created a whole separate document for that. We're still working on finalizing all those, but I would like to bring those once we have them finalized for you to review as a separate piece, not part of the policy. Because I think that's something we need to review on a annual basis, where we are at with our pricing and whether you want to continue to approve it annually as a board, but keep it out of the policy.
I think it makes perfect sense to have
Yeah,
fee schedule
so it's a
separate.
little bit separate. And then the third document you have is a new appendix to 902 titled Appendix B, Requirements for Alcoholic Beverage Sales and Service in the Gitches eBay Center for the Arts. Our manager of the facility helped create this, and it's been reviewed as well by our legal counsel, and just basically spells out the requirements that we would set. So starting with a very kind of narrow window of when we would allow it, which is
spelled out as during the summer months in the period between the last day of student contact and the first day of student contact. So, and then alcohol sales and service would be limited to the hours of between 5 and 9 p.m. So if an event comes in that's longer than that, their alcohol service would have to be between those hours. It would also require security personnel to be on site, appropriate number as determined by the number of people attending the event. Fees for that would be passed on to the user. And let's see if there's any other. Of course, we would require, them to follow all state and city ordinances and regulations regarding that. They would be utilizing a licensed caterer to, any user would have to make those arrangements with the caterer to come in. So.
Thank you.
Questions,
A lot
probably?
of work, but it's good. It's a good job. Thank you for doing that. Very laid out very clearly.
The only clarification I want to make is that when we talked about student contact, it's as per the school calendar.
Right. Is that in there? I think it says it like
I
that.
think it is.
It does say that.
As per board approved school calendar, yeah.
So it's.
Because that could vary every year depending on.
So sports or summer school going on in the summer, or sports, bless you, sports starting in August, that it's just that June to August period of time between student contact in the calendar. So, just wanted to clarify that. Otherwise, yeah, thank you everyone for meeting and providing guidance on that.
Yes. My only other question on this, I watched the discussion you guys had on this last time. I wasn't at that meeting, but so if I'm reading this correctly, the entity that wishes to serve this stuff would apply during this window or whatever this timetable is, 15 days in advance or whatever, and it's the superintendent that decides whether that particular event.
Superintendent or designee is the way that it's worded in here, which gives us a little bit of flexibility with who would be ultimately it would be the superintendent, the way it's worded now, but.
Or you, because you're heading it up through the community education.
Well, that's fine. I guess where I was trying to take it was that versus coming through this body, for example.
Oh, if we want it board approved each time.
Yeah, I can see issues with both directions, right? So it's an interesting discussion point. I don't know that I'm really married to anything one way or the other. I just wanted to throw it out there and get a feel for why that was chosen as the route to go, if there was any rationale behind it, or if it just seemed to make sense, or if our legal counsel put it in there, or
We
what
did
the
talk
evolution
about
is.
it
Did you?
as a group, and we felt like because we want to have this be as tight as possible, a short timeline, very specific time in the evening, all of the hoops that you have to jump through. And so then we thought that because we made it so narrow.
Sure, otherwise
pretty
then you
cut and
gotta sit
dry.
around and wait and it's bureaucratic. Got it, okay.
And kind of if they meet those checklists, this is check,
Okay,
And
cool.
we felt that we wanted to start tighter, as tight as we could with this policy so that we have good control over it, and then can come back to the board to be reevaluated if needed, or tightened up, or stay the same, or loosened. But right now it's quite tight.
So, want to make a motion?
I'll move to approve the first reading of MSBA policy number 902 and 902A appendix and the procedures as presented.
I'll second it.
Okay, first from Director Schrogren, a second from Director Spear. Any further discussion?
Have we been intentional about a few different things? Is a question. I know there's a lot of work done. Appreciate your efforts with this in terms of the policy and whatnot. But that's attending to the decision that was voted on and approved by certain members of the board. but I still have questions that haven't been attended to yet at this point. And a significant one that I've struggled with is, I shared with some of the board members, before I came in today, my wife and I live on Perch Lake, and my son and I were putting in our dock, and I realized I had to get going to come to the school board meeting. So my son, who has a lot of questions, asked, well, Dad, what are you going to be doing at the school board? And he had heard Mom and I talking about a few things. So he asked about alcohol and asked what that was about. So that was my opportunity, I guess, to try to explain to him what we're talking about as a board, but also to try to add some context to the conversation that he's overheard from his parents. So when I shared with him what the nitty-gritty of what we're discussing here, at least in my opinion, his only question was why. Why alcohol? Why does it have to be at the school? For his 11-year-old thought process, it makes no sense that we would have alcohol there. Now, granted, I don't drink. I've shared that before. But so there might be some coloring of that, but his grandparents do, his aunts and uncles do, and they do it in a very respectful fashion, and we're pleased at that. But he's a student, and he's a leader within the middle school. He's on the student council. And so in terms of being intentional, have we approached our students? Because there's one student leader that was in the lake with me today that has a lot of questions. And have we been intentional about hearing those students? Not just my 11-year-old, but the other students as well. Because I've sat around this table and kind of been lopped over the head with members from the community because we didn't listen to our students enough. So this is something that's pretty significant that could impact them and some of their classmates and families. So my question is, have we been intentional about addressing and hearing what our students have to say? The other piece is, I'm still curious about the mental health aspects of it. And I've gotten a few different thoughts from some individuals in the community. But what we haven't done, or what I'm still curious of, is what type of impact will this have on our students, or could it have, or what type of comfort can a person like myself receive that, hey, we can do this. This isn't going to impact our students at all, either mental health, emotional, whatnot. Have we been intentional when it comes to those pieces? I'm assuming not. But I still feel uncomfortable moving forward with this until we can get those responses. I still feel that we're pushing in an area where I don't think we necessarily need to have to push at this point.
Well, I would echo what Director Blacklance has said, and if this, which my assumption is this is going to get approved, I would suggest maybe striking in section 6A, 3, and 9, because it just seems to contradict to what appears is going to be approved. Section 6A3 talks about advertise or promote any activity, product, or service that is illegal for minors or adults. It seems odd that we would have that statement in here.
Is this under the policy, or?
Yes, yeah.
It's on the second page.
As well as number 9, may be detrimental to the best interest of the school district. So that's probably subject to opinion. In my mind, it is detrimental.
Would you tell me the first one you said again? I'm
Number
sorry.
3.
Oh, number 3, okay.
Yeah, section 6A, 3, and 9.
Okay.
I would suggest striking that. I agree regardless of the alcohol. I agree with the Appendix A and pulling the fees out so that could be managed separately. I'm not certain about Appendix B, why you would have a separate document. It seems like you would roll that into one.
Put Appendix B with A is what you're thinking?
Well, Appendix A, keeping the fees separate, I think that's a good approach. It seems like Appendix B has a lot of carryover from the policy, so why you just want to put whatever you want in Appendix B right into the policy?
So like in 7C, to put all of this in there?
Yeah, some of it's already in there.
Yeah.
Right.
Are you talking about Appendix
A lot of
A?
it's already in there.
Probably. Are you talking about Appendix A?
No, B.
Or
B.
No, B. I mean, a lot of it is just, I would just have a policy and then your fee schedule is separate instead of,
Okay.
He's saying put it in the policy.
it just makes it more cumbersome in my mind. And then, for me, just the biggest thing is, it's kind of like what Charles said, it's the why, especially, I see this drilled down to, if there's one intermission, we're talking about 75 minutes of serving time. If I'm understanding this proposed policy, 50 minutes beforehand, and 25 minutes during a 30-minute intermission. And I think, gosh, if you really need to have a glass of wine so that your experience can be enhanced, maybe you can patronize a local business and go have a bite to eat and get your glass of wine so that you're enhanced before you attend this. Additional concerns I have is this is the beginning only of a lot of requests that are going to come about a party maybe on the football field or another outside at the soccer fields, and then how we're going to address that. Well, why did you change the policy for the Gitchizebe, but you won't allow for this? And I also think it's going to be, I think you're going to be in a really tough position of, to some degree, it seems like we'd have to say yes to anybody that applies as long as they meet this criteria, kind of regardless of what the event is. As long as they meet this criteria, and you don't know what kind of event that may be. And so then pretty soon I see this, unfortunately, a superintendent or designee is going to be in a tough spot trying to make these decisions, yes for this one, no for that one, and the no's are going to then reach out to the board. Well, why did you allow this one? And it is just opening up a can of worms. This is purely an exception, started by the request, but it's purely an exception to a policy that I thought was well written before, and we haven't even gotten one season to see how we can perform without alcohol there. So I'm just the idea of serving alcohol on school property doesn't sit well for me. But anyway, I've said that before. I would suggest making these changes, so if you're going to proceed with moving forward. And good luck. It'll be tough. It's going to be a tough one to manage.
Well, I think as far as approving events there, we're going to look at the event first, and if it's an appropriate event for that facility or not. I don't think, and if it is, then most likely with these stringent things.
Well, and that's why I asked the question that I asked, is because it isn't we, it's designee.
Right.
That looks at that and makes that decision. So I think Director Hagman's point is well taken, that it definitely puts, certainly puts a spotlight on, I guess whether there's a designee or not, it's going to be right on the superintendent, because ultimately they're going to be the one kind of driving those decisions, and you're going to have to be especially cognizant to not, to use the same weighting and the same decision-making process for every single one, for the very reason that Director Hagman indicated, which is if you, for some particular reason, something about one particular event doesn't get approved and the other one does, it's gonna create an environment of accusations of unfairness and again, in other communities that are larger with more nefarious entities within there, it opens up any number of channels for speculation, right, on things like that, like the entire state of New Jersey, for example. Where I end up on this, ultimately, because I think it's my night to be captain swing vote, two things. One was deliberately back in early May when we compelled this to be on the agenda for May, and I was part of that, sort of movement to get it onto that May 25th agenda with the purpose of giving that period from between May 13th or 12th or whenever that meeting was and this meeting to have ample time for anybody in the community that wanted to share their voice and their concerns to reach out to us, which early on, no shortage of people availed themselves of that opportunity. It's probably the single issue I've gotten the single most emails over a short period of time on. So I feel like, at least from where I sit, that was my biggest concern going into this was, were we listening or giving the community an opportunity to sound off on the issue? As I indicated in the comments that I asked Director Nelson to read before the last meeting, I was pleased with the feedback that we got from the community because people didn't fall into their traditional camps that we're used to seeing people fall into on other issues in this community. People, that are all over the board politically or whatever tended to come in from their own unique vantage points. We got some form emails, but in my opinion, those still count. We got emails that said, hell no. Those also counted. I didn't really care what the delivery mechanism was for the syntax involved in what they espoused to us. I was just glad to see people going thumbs up, thumbs down, so I could count noses and think about some of the things that some people wrote. We have some very thoughtful people that come to a lot of our board meetings that wrote us lengthy emails with stuff. We had former school board members from other school districts in other states that wrote us thoughtful messages. I thought we got a lot of great feedback from the community on both sides of the issue. But in the end, when you counted the noses, I counted a lot more noses in favor of this than not in favor of this. And by itself, that isn't what compels me to my vote tonight. What compels me to my vote tonight is that, combined with my notion that the Gitche-Zebe is a unique facility among all other school facilities that we have in the way that it was funded and approved by the voter, and how it's used by the community, with a caveat that a lot of our sports fields are definitely used heavily by the community as well. But in the end, my own take on it is that the Gitche-Zebe Center is a public facility that happens to be owned by the school district and attached to the high school with the ability to close it off from the high school and create a self-contained entity. And as such, it's a public facility and the public will should rule. As it relates to Director Blacklance's concerns about the students, I don't want to shortchange those. Both you and Director Hagelin make very eloquent points, and it's not an easy decision for any of us, I don't think. But in the end, because of the tightness with which this is written, the students aren't going to be around when these things are going on in these very, very limited scenarios, unless their parents want them to be around for it, in which case I think that mitigates that to some extent. As to the mental health piece, I don't really know. I mean, I guess it's the same mental health considerations you have to make if you're going to take your child to Applebee's, because in my mind, the fact that it's on school grounds doesn't create a much weightier psychological situation for a 14-year-old, in my mind. Maybe I'm short-selling it, and that's okay, but that's my explanation for where I'm going to cast my vote tonight. Thanks for indulging me again.
I don't believe that we can simply assume what our student body feels. I think that to assume that we would be missing the mark in terms of what I feel our role is here is to make sure that we have a top quality educational facility that serves our students. And at this point, I don't believe we've done that. I believe that we are supporting habit and putting habit or entertainment before student. And that's a concern of mine. And I believe that in the very end, it's important to include the students. we've talked about the possibility of having a student here on our board at some level. Why? Because we want to hear what the students have to say. And this is probably one of the more significant matters to face our school, at least from where I sit, and we aren't doing that. But now we're into the summer, and I get that. But these are still questions that I have. We can talk it away, but those concerns are always going to remain.
I think that's valid, and I don't want to diminish the impact of that on kids. And I also think, you know, the reason for my vote tonight is because we made a promise to the community. They were part of that conversation, and they said, this is why we're going to vote yes for this. And for us to break that promise, I think that says something to our students too, if they're watching.
Sarah, can you clarify what the promise is that was made?
So when we started putting together, and I wasn't a part of that, but my understanding, and I was a part of the phone conversations that followed many of them, was when we put question number 3 on the ballot, we said we'd like to see this as a community space. We'd like this to be utilized by professional performances as a professional art space, something that we've never said about the football field, bringing in NFL teams or whatever that is. We said this is going to be a cooperative effort. And a lot of folks said, yes, we will vote for that because we really look forward to sharing this. We're not going to build our own space. We're going to invest. We're going to invest in that space. And for us to then say we've decided we really don't want to partner in the way that you want us to, I think is not staying true to our commitment to the community on that partnership.
I'm not following up. What promise is it that we're breaking, though? It's still a community center. Because we're not serving alcohol, we're breaking a promise? Or what part am I missing here?
I don't think it's necessarily even the alcohol. They've asked something of us for that space. I mean, in good faith, I think we need to come and sit at the table and say, okay, how could we make that work? Or why is this, important to you? How does this make the event what you had hoped for it to be when you said yes to this space? Whether it's alcohol or whatever they would ask of us, I think to be a good partner, we would listen to that, and we would do what we could do to make that something we could accomplish, help them accomplish as a partner.
I think that if had I heard, because I was actively a part of this planning process as well before I was before I was on the school board. I know Jana was, and I know you were. Had it been shared with me that was part of the deal to serve alcohol at this place, that we spent a lot of hours and bus rides down to Hopkins and all these other middle schools to look at the other performing arts centers. Had I known that was part of the deal, that was going to be a significant part of this plan, I would never have been supportive of that. And my question, or not my question, but my wondering is I wonder if other people in the community would not have been as supportive either. So then that causes me to feel at times that I may have been a victim of the Muhammad Ali rope-a-dope, where you're looking at one thing, the left hand, then you get hit with the right hand. So we're looking at the shiny new penny of the Gitches EB Center, but not realizing all these other punches that can happen along the way. Because had I known that early on, I wouldn't have supported that. I wouldn't have been as active in terms of pushing for it. And I agree, it's a community center, but this is a significant piece. And it wasn't part of the planning. I don't remember it being part of the community discussions that we had. I sat in a number of them proudly, and never was that part of that process. And so for us to sit here, I appreciate what you're saying and your view. I don't agree. I don't think that we're breaking any promise. The only promise that I'm working hard to uphold is what I felt my promise was in terms of taking that oath at the beginning of my term here was to ensure a strong academic setting and to a safe environment for our students. So I feel that we're really in the end that we're really entering into a slippery slope, and it's one that it's important for all of you to hear that my 11-year-old son is questioning. His 11-year-old eyebrow is raised in terms of what on earth we're doing here as a school board. And tonight I'm going to have to go home and explain to him why this got passed, and I'm not going to have an answer for him. I find it hard to believe he's the only student that's going to be asking that question.
Yeah, just to further clarify too, when we put the policy in place 2 years ago, the board at that time, we had a lot of discussion about serving alcohol or not, and decided against it, and that's why the current policy is the way it is. And we didn't, that was after the voting, and I certainly don't remember promoting this at all with the idea of serving alcohol would be a part of that. It is a beautiful community center that is, it's for our public, just like all of the district properties. It's all owned by our district. It's all community assets. And so I don't see where we'd be breaking a promise because we aren't serving alcohol.
Yeah. I'm a little confused here because we voted at the last meeting to approve serving alcohol in very limited circumstances, only at the Gitches EV, only in the summertime. And today's agenda item is just to approve the policy that supports that. So I understand you have strong opposition, and you voiced that and voted at the last meeting for that. So now, I guess you're maybe hoping that someone will vote no on this so we can't go forward, but we've already voted on the actual decision that you guys are arguing.
Sure, you just asked for comments.
Okay, so anyway.
Well, reinforcing it.
Which is fine, but.
Point of order though is that what happened was it was approved on the basis that the policy would be looked at and approved.
Okay.
So from what I told the people that asked me questions is, I don't know if it's a done deal yet at this point, but we're moving down that direction and we'll see where the policy lands.
Well, again, it would be, think of us as the US Supreme Court. We can opt to take up a case or not take up a case. If we take up a case where there is a long-standing, say 40-year precedent, and we decide to overturn it, that is the will of the court as it sits at that moment in time. That's why we're statutorily compelled to review some of these policies on an annual basis so that new boards with new perspectives can incorporate ever-changing and adapting views of the community or whatever, right? So the idea that a codified policy from 2 years ago, 6 years ago, 8 years ago should carry forward, that's the only argument that I've heard that I really don't see a lot of merit to. In the end, we're here, it's open, we've had a request. Those are all things that didn't exist 2 years ago before it opened its doors last spring. So I think it's relevant to have the policy discussion now and to evolve the policy and grow the policy, just like I'm sure as school safety becomes an even bigger issue, we're going to have to constantly be reviewing all of those policies as well. I would hate to think that we would sit and say, I'm going to fall back on our policy from 4 years ago on safe and secure school buildings. I realize that's a much higher gravity item than this is, but I think to Director Blacklance's point, though, I think we are voting about that because it can't go forward without a policy to drive it.
Well, I'm not complaining about
But our
that.
discussion should be more focused on the policy.
Sure.
It's not focused on the policy at all.
It feels to me, I think this is really important to have good discussion about. I think people deserve to get to hear us talk about it. I guess I respectfully suggest that I think we were to the point where the discussion has been had and we need to call a question. But that's just where I'm at personally, I guess.
No, you can't. Sorry. So we're at, I heard some concerns on this specific policy that I kind of, truthfully, I kind of like having a separate thing just for the alcohol part, but I mean, it could be combined, but it's just.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Just suggesting.
I mean, in the end, I don't want to split hairs, but the heading under section C in there is tobacco, alcohol, and illegal substances. I mean, illegal substances with alcohol and the same thing, I guess. I understand the desire to have it separated out.
I'm
Section
not
7
strongly
in the policy itself.
in the yeah.
I think if you keep it separate in section C, it should say C Appendix B. That should be added to it.
Or
somewhere.
to keep it more like how Director Haglund wants it, you could create another section for alcohol specifically.
I don't have a hang up either way.
Yeah, I mean, that'd be one of those two things, just to kind of not group it and lump it together so that it's called out as a separate issue, one way or the other. And this is the first, I think, of several things we're going to have to review as it relates to the Get Your ZB. This will be the hardest one. The next ones are going to be that right now I get feedback from the community that certain groups are looking to do events in there and having difficulty bringing different kinds of groups in and events in because we're far too restrictive on what can be done in there and what can't be done in there. Now, maybe some of that's for the, for the sake of the maintenance of the facility, and I get that, but I think I think we need to get a little deeper down into the weeds on that at some point in the future too.
Okay, so we could have the first reading and bring it back with the edits. Do you want it all in the policy or do you want appendixes?
Would you like me to seek legal counsel on his recommendation for if it makes sense to combine?
I would just leave it at exactly how you have it. I wouldn't spend more dollars on legal counsel.
Taking A3 and A9 out.
You could leave everything the way it is. I mean, I'm going to be voting against the whole thing, so.
The only thing I would do is based on what Superintendent Larson requested, I would call out Appendix B in Section C and 7C where it talks about what can be served or whatever.
Yep.
Yeah. That would be the only change that I would make. I'm with Tom. I don't see the need to drag legal counsel in.
Yep, we need a motion.
I think we have a motion.
Oh, we do. Oh, we do. Thank you. It's been so long. Okay, so we have a motion from Director Sjogren, a second from Director Spear. Any other comments?
But,
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign.
aye.
Okay, 4-2 with Director Hagelin and Director Bellak-Lance opposed. Thank you, everyone. Good, it was good discussion, so, yeah. Okay, we'll go on to informational. Jana Sjogren, Brainerd Public Schools.
The main update this month is that our Brainerd Public School Foundation took on and hosted the Retired Teachers Luncheon just last week. I wasn't able to attend because I was getting ready for a graduation at my house, but they had nearly 70 attendees. I'm not sure how that compares to past years, but by all accounts, it sounded like a very successful event, and it was a good to transition it to the foundation. So
I was there, I spoke at it, and it was awesome. It was just the neatest, most intimate setting and nice dedication to all of the staff that have served. They had people stand up based on how many years they've been retired, and there were 2 people there that were in the 30s of years, like 33 years that they've been retired. So they've been retired longer than they had served as a teacher. But it was really, really beautiful to have that many people there, and thank goodness for the foundation that they were willing to take that over and to make that happen. And it was hosted at the Woods, and it was really awesome. Wonderful day.
Good. Yeah, wonderful.
that's all I have for
Okay,
this month.
cool.
Yeah.
Business Services Report?
So, there is no enrollment report because Sue has started the submission, cleaning up the data. But I did put in there the non-residents, so last month it was what, resident people, students are going out, and this is the non-residents that are coming in. I probably should have added a total at the bottom so you could see the difference, but it's very interesting. So in 2011 and 12, we were gaining 60 kids. And then every year it just slowly decreases. So the next year we were up 23. Then we started losing 20, 21, 74, 95, 111, 136. And then the most recent year, our net were negative 200 kids. So it's very interesting to see that we're just slowly losing more and more between the two. Next month, I'm going to be reporting on early childhood. You know, we're always hearing about how early childhood is growing. I'll have some data for you on what is the last 10 years for our early childhood numbers, and then what has been our kindergarten numbers, so you can see, are they coming to us or are they not? Are they then going to other schools? So after that, whatever you guys want, I will try to find.
Thank you, Marcy.
And then the other item in there is the financial report. And the only thing to note, when you look at food service, last year it was at like 68%. This year it's 79%. Not alarming when you look at our 2 years ago, the most recent normal years, 1920, we were at 82%, 81%. So within the range.
Thank you. Thank you, Marcy. Your last superintendent's report.
I know, just for a little bit. I thought that there might be another one on the 27th. So I thought this might not be lucky I didn't do it earlier.
We're trying to return the cake.
That's right, there's cake out here. I guess I just have to start by saying thank you. I just want to thank all of you who are sitting around this table and the people who were here before, some of you, just for believing in me, and I'm gonna cry and I wasn't going to, and for believing in me and bringing me to Brainerd 6 years ago. This has been a dream of a lifetime to serve the Brainerd Public Schools, and I hope I made you proud. Get it together a little bit. This truly is one of the greatest school districts in the state of Minnesota, and we have so very, very much to be proud of. You know, when I think about the board and how committed you are to bringing forth what's best for children, you brought it up all night long. I kept hearing you say about what are we doing for children academically, as far as the arts and making decisions with the kids connected. Our administrative team, who just puts the heart and soul into providing the best education they can in their buildings. Our teachers, who just give and give and give, and the stories that you hear about the work that they do is absolutely incredible. All of our support staff and the work that they do, our bus drivers, our cooks, our building and grounds, everyone, just what they do to make a difference in the lives of our children. Sarah, your team in technology, I too wanted to add tonight how great, what a wonderful addition you were to this school, and thank you for your commitment. I remember the very first day you and I sat at my table, and I had come from a one-to-one school, and you and I sat there and we said, how do we make this happen? And slowly it happened, and then COVID occurred, and literally within 8 days, your team got the technology that we need. Our teachers did the work that they needed to do, and we created miracles. And although COVID was difficult, nobody led it as good as we did. We did our best, and we did what we could to try to provide the best education that we could for children. As I've said so often, I am so proud to be a teacher, and I always consider myself a teacher. I was raised by parents who believed that education was the most important profession in the world, and I believe it today. And I'm honored to have had my career as a teacher. It's not over. As my life coach says, I'm just graduating to what the next step is going to be. I don't know what it's going to be, but I know that I'm going to be in this community, hopefully making a huge difference, working alongside you. Everything happens when you have the right team at the right time, and that's what we've had when I've been here. I wish Heidi the very best of luck. You're going to do a great job. Congratulations, and it'll be an honor to have you sitting in this seat next month. And to everyone, thank you for being partners on behalf of our kids.
Do you want to bring the cake up here?
Sure. Thanks. Yeah. Awesome.
So is this, can we make a few comments? Is that all right? So Elaine, I want to thank you.
I love frosting.
Don't start looking at frosting right now.
I'll just eat a rose, yeah.
But I remember seeing you for the first time in action down at the MEA at the school board conference. Yeah. And when we knew that you had, I think had applied at the time, and I had attended because your district was one of the presenters.
Correct.
And it was so fun to watch you in action and thinking, yeah, we've got to get this lady here and lead this district. Been very grateful for your leadership. Love your passion and your drive to get into the community as deep as you have. I think that's probably not normal, I suspect. I wouldn't even ask Heidi to have to follow the same footsteps, because I think you really have went above and beyond to really get to know the community and all of the organizations out there, which has been very good for the district and good for our community. Disappointed that I always said that there's some small print in the contract that would be 10 years, but somehow that got lost, so I'm disappointed.
I remember that too, I know.
I don't know what happened there.
We talked about that the night of the referendum, didn't we?
But thank you for your unwavering leadership and dedication. You'll be missed.
Thank you. Thanks for being a great partner.
And I do welcome Heidi to take the reins and run with us. So thank you.
Welcome. I do have to tell you a funny story. When I was in college, I was in a sorority, and we always had Monday night meetings. And when I graduated from college, I said, I am never going to another Monday night meeting as long as I live. And I've been going to them for 40 more years. So I think it's kind of funny. It's like, I wonder if I'll still be going to Monday night meetings. So, yeah.
Well,
so let's have cake.
Yeah, let's have cake and.
Let's adjourn first.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Well, since I won't be there on Wednesday, I want to just say a couple of things too, if you don't mind. Providence, sometimes as a nation, sometimes as a state, and as a community, places leaders in the wrong place at the wrong time, the right place at the wrong time. And every so often, as citizens, we're lucky enough to get the right leader at the right time. And that's not an accident. It happens for two reasons. One, it happened because the Board of Education at that time saw what we all know you possess. I wasn't on that board at that time, so I can't take credit for that decision. And part of it is just you being you. And this district is going into very capable hands of Heidi Hahn, but being passed from one of the best leaders that this part of the state has ever seen in any capacity, let alone superintendent of schools. And it's, there are thousands of children that have gone out into the world that are making a difference because of the dedication and the work that you've put in every day, and that there isn't a paycheck on earth that can pay you back for all of that. So hopefully some words will help. Thank you.
One thing I'd like to share is my earliest experience with you, Elaine, was well before I was on the board. But it's the piece that I'll remember moving forward about you and your character and of your role, but also of the person that is Elaine. Is years ago, when you first came to our district, I was a parent and not on the school board, but we were, on one arm, I was attempting to be heard by our school district in terms of the advocacy of our Indigenous students. And then on the other hand, I was being an advocate for one of my children. And both scenarios, I'll admit, eventually were part of the variables as to why I decided to want to become part of the school board. But my point is that both situations I felt, and my wife, Catherine, felt that we were really hollering and even at times screaming into the wind and not necessarily being heard. And as a parent, advocating for a child, that's a very lonely place to be. As activist, advocating for Indigenous students, that's a very, very lonely place to be. Lane, when you came on board, you heard my family, you heard our group, which is now the American Indian Parent Advisory Committee, and I am so appreciative of that, and I'll always remember your willingness to hear a parent from the community, and that was so important. Did everything happen the way I'd hoped? Not necessarily, but it was so important to be heard, and I will always appreciate that.
Go ahead. We do need to adjourn. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
First from Director Hagelin, second from Director Boyles.